9:04, and we are going to open our session. First order of business is our roll call. Mr. James Bowen.
Here.
Mr. Ron Jemison.
Here.
Ms. Jenny Grisham.
Yes, but my name is actually Jenny Hatch. We're gonna fix this.
Okay, thank you. We apologize. And Ms. Michelle Narlo, am I saying it correct?
Here.
Good.
We'll be fixed.
SSEUR? Okay. What is today? 26? It's good to see everybody. It's been a little bit since we have been here. It's been a really interesting time. This will be our first meeting. Thank you. You all can't hear me? Thanks. This will be our first time with our new executive director. So we want to congratulate Mr. Brian Francis.
Thank you very much.
Yay!
I just want to break out in a song and say,
Yes.
I was born by the river and all that good stuff.
Mr. Coons has retired, but left us in very good hands. As you know, we have worked extensively with Mr. Francis, and so he's infinitely qualified and knows all the ropes and has guided us over the hills and through the dales and all of that, so we appreciate that. I see some attractive-looking people here, so I'm guessing where you're from, but I'll let someone tell me.
We're from Maestro's Barber Cat.
Very good, very good. I wanted to get our meeting started with our open public comment, and I see that we have one from Mr. Kevin Lane. Would you take the seat, please?
Madam Chair, I don't want to interrupt you. If we could we bring up Colleen Tran to do training?
Oh,
for the
sure, if
members?
you
We
want
have
to do
a new
that
member
first.
on
Okay.
board, so Mr. Lane, we're going to bring you back up in a second.
Oh, okay.
We're just
Okay.
we got to get these folks trained up there and make sure they
Okay.
know what they're doing. So we can pay them that $0.
If not, it's gonna get crazy.
Lane, sorry about that.
Oh, sure.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Colleen. I'm the Assistant General Counsel for the Barber Program. I'm new to the Barber Program, so I'm glad to meet everybody on the board. And if we haven't had a chance to meet, we'll meet, when we have a break. And hello to everybody who's from the industry. So we have to train all of our board members on the Open Meetings Act, the Administrative Procedures Act, and the Public Information Act. So I'm going to do just a brief overview of all three this morning for you guys. The first one is the Open Meetings Act. So the primary purpose is to ensure an open and transparent government. So when we have a public meeting, we invite the public in, we want them to know exactly the business that we're going to be discussing and let them know that they can attend. And there are three requirements for the Open Meetings Act and what qualifies as a meeting. The first is the notice requirement. So TDLR and the advisory board or committee has to provide notice, written notice, of the date, hour, place, and the subject of the meeting. So this notice has to be posted 7 days in advance, and we provide notice of the meeting through the Secretary of State's office, so we submit our agenda and the notice of our meeting to the Secretary of State's office, and we also post our meetings on our website. And we take an extra step. We also email out information. So we try to make it as transparent as possible that we're going to hold a meeting and what that meeting is going to be about. The second requirement is the quorum requirement. So a quorum of the committee or the advisory board has to be present. So for our board, there are 5 members, so 3 members makes a quorum. And if a quorum isn't present, we're not allowed to meet and discuss let me take that back. I just lied. You can meet, but you can't take any formal action. So if you're waiting on a last member to make your quorum, you should probably wait so that you can actually take and discuss and actually take formal action. If you don't have a quorum, it's always good to meet and have a discussion, but just remember you can't do anything official. And the last requirement is discussion and formal action. So a government body, such as yourself, the advisory board, may only meet to discuss public business or public policies under supervision or control of that board, and you can only take formal actions on those matters that are under your purview. So we get a lot of questions about social functions and meetings. So if you have a quorum of a body that's present at a social function, be it a cocktail hour or something like that, and it's unrelated to your public business that you conduct as a board, then it's only subject to the Open Meetings Act if a quorum of the board members verbally exchange information or talk about and engage in official business of which they have supervision or control over. So it's not engaging in a meeting if you just have kind of incidental conversation. But again, since you are a smaller board, it's kind of easier to kind of hit that quorum. So just be careful. Again, if you're at conferences or workshops that are about your business, just try, and you're all there and there's a quorum, then you're not engaging in a meeting that needs to be noticed and publicized. If your conversations are just incidental to the event and there's no formal action taken. So it's just something to be mindful of. Some things to remember, be aware of any situation occurring outside of the properly noticed board or committee meeting in which there are a quorum of members present. Don't engage in any substantive conversations relating to the business or the policy of the board when you're not in an officially noticed meeting. And what's worrisome and easier to do these days is this walking quorum, and we'll discuss that. So a walking quorum occurs when less than a quorum of a board or committee members discuss official business through any means in communication where they discuss board business. So while less than a quorum begins the conversation, so say two people have a conversation, then that conversation walks itself to a quorum. This will result in discussing official business outside of a public meeting, and we have an example. So on a 5-member board, 2 members exchange phone calls or emails expressing some thoughts or discussion, or exchanging ideas on an upcoming rule, and they've each performed their own information, they're just discussing it. Well, if one of those board members forwards that exchange to a third board member, if you're on a 5-member board, you now have a quorum discussing board business. So you've engaged in a walking quorum by starting with less than a quorum, but then now engaging a full quorum in that discussion. So this is something to be aware of, and it's so easy these days with conference calls, video calls, hallway discussions about official board business that may happen, emails, text messages, and the new technology. So Twitter, Facebook, any of those mediums where you're discussing official board business and you take it to a third member, then you're possibly in violation of the walking quorum. So to avoid the appearance of violating the act, committee members should not meet in small groups to discuss business and then communicate that with other board members, send emails or text messages to a quorum regarding official business, even if the email is addressed to each individual member. So you can't, it's not just that you're all grouped in one email. If you discuss the same business and you send separate emails to a quorum, that's still a violation of the notice and meeting requirement. And then the final thing is of polling. So kind of getting, on asking each individual member on an individual basis how they feel possibly about a certain rule or how they're going to vote. That's essentially polling your members, and the same as having a discussion about an issue and being in a violation of that. So the guideline for open session, So the board and committees, you're limited to discussing the specific items on your agenda. And during the public comment period, which we'll have in a minute, members of the public can come and they can speak on any topic or subject they would like to, and you can limit their time if you would like as well. And so one thing to remember is that during that time, it's for the time for the public to comment, but not necessarily for us to engage, because it could be that they bring up a topic or subject that wasn't on our agenda, meaning that other members of the public weren't on notice that this was something you guys were going to discuss. So it's if you need points of clarification or asking that type of question, that's one thing, but it's not a time to have a discussion on those subjects, because we're limited to what is on our agenda to make sure that everybody is on notice of what we're discussing. So some best practices to avoid violating the acts on the basis of insufficient notice. Board members should specifically identify items on the agenda and communicate those items to TDLR staff. Tam is here, and she's amazing, and if you need anything, you can let us know if there's something you want to discuss on the agenda, and we'll make sure to the best of our abilities that it's something that we can publicize and let the public know we're talking about. Limit discussions to the specific items contained on the agenda and that were in our posting. Avoid letting discussions regarding specific items wander off course. And this can happen when we get into a discussion or a topic and we want to discuss things and it kind of takes off. Just be mindful, and Mary and myself will be here to kind of bring it back if we need to. And then should you want to respond to a public comment or anything like that, just let us know and we can post it for something in the future, like for a future agenda item, so that everybody's on notice of what we would like to discuss in the future. So it's something that we can do for in the future for sure, and put it on our agenda and properly notice it. So some remedies and like penalties for violation of the Open Meetings Act. Any interested person that can petition the court to stop action taken in violation of the Open Meetings Act, so they can stop, if any action that you've officially taken, they can stop that, and it can also void that action if it was in violation of the Open Meetings Act. There are criminal penalties that can be assessed, a fine from anywhere from $100 to $500, or confinement in jail, or both. And kind of just best practices is avoid communications that involve a quorum when you're talking about official business outside of a noticed public meeting. During the meeting, confine your discussions to things that are on the agenda. And if you have any questions, I'm always around, and you can always email me, or I'm sure some way you can find me. It's no big deal. I'm always here. So, and this is just resources for you, and then the GC number if you need it. So the next area that we cover is the Administrative Procedures Act. So the purpose of the Administrative Procedures Act, or the APA, is to establish minimum standards of uniform practice and procedures for state agencies to provide for public participation and transparency during the rulemaking process. A rule is simply a statement made by the state agency that implements, interprets, or prescribes law or policy, or describes the procedure or practice requirement of a state agency. So it must include amendments or repeals of prior rules, and it's not solely confined to internal management or organization of a state agency, so it can be pretty broad. Any interested person, and these are listed a lot of people or entities that can petition for an adoption of a rule, and it's also known as initiating a rulemaking process. And this is a quick overview of what the APA looks like. So we start with an idea or rule or statute that tells us to do something. Draft rules are sent to you, the advisory board. Then they're filed with the Texas Register with the Secretary of State. They sit for 30 days for public comment. Those public comments are reviewed by the General Counsel's Office, me, and we recommend any changes or no changes. The board would review those comments and recommendation and then send that to the commission for their review of the rules and the comments, and recommend it to be adopted. Adoption is filed with the Texas Register, and the rules become effective 20 days after that. So that's a real quick APA process. We also do at the agency a rule review. So every 4 years, programs rules, if they haven't been opened up, they'll be opened up for review. When notice of intent for review is given, and then 30 days of public comment to make sure the rules are still necessary to run the program. They're still valid to run the program. GC reviews those comments just like we did in the first process, and they go straight to the commission. They'll go through those, and then they may re-adopt the rules, and the advisory will be presented with the comments and any changes or anything like that. These are resources for your rulemaking process. It's pretty technical, so again, if you guys have any questions on that overall process, I'm always available to you guys to answer those. And the final one is the Public Information Act. At the very base, the purpose of it is that each person is entitled, unless there's some express law that says you can't provide this info, at all times to complete information about the affairs of government and the official acts of public officials and their employees. So what this means is all documents, records, and other information relating to official business is open to the public with a few exceptions, which we'll go over in a minute. So public information includes any electronic communications created, transmitted, or received or maintained on any device if it is in connection with official business. So state phone, personal phone, you're doing official business, that record is open. If you receive a public information request, we ask that you just send it to us as quickly as possible because there's a time limit on when we need to respond, and we probably, sometimes we have to do research if there are exceptions that we need to ask the AG for to not release certain information, but we want to just make sure that we are timely in our response. We can't ask anybody why they want the record. We can ask for clarifications, but what they want to do with that record is their business. We're just obligated to turn that information over. The exceptions to disclosure include your date of birth, emails, certain educational documents, HIPAA records, Social Security, things like that. So we'll just need time, because if those information is in there, we'll need time to redact it, but still be timely in our response. And there's a lot of info. And again, if you need anything, let me know. If y'all have questions, I think that's
Any
it.
questions?
And I'm
Thank
always
you.
around if y'all need me.
It has not, to the board, I would say, it has not been much of a problem in recent times, but there was a time when emails would come addressed to all of us, and we would respond to everyone, and that is what we want to avoid. If you get an email that has all of us on it, respond individually back to the person, but not reply to all. The other element was, there was a time when we were a lot of times involved in the legislative process, so you see each other, and oh, by the way, now there are 2 or 3 of us in the hall, and the discussion starts quite innocently. And so it's really great for us to be reminded of this each time, so we know how to stay within the bounds. The third thing that used to happen frequently, and I have not noticed it happening recently, is that as information is sent out about what's going on in the legislative process, oftentimes people will have questions, or sometimes after the meetings, and they will email you saying, can you help me get this problem solved? The best solution is to say, I'll look into that and forward it to Ms. Fletcher, because most of the time she will know she'll know the correct person to send it to, and then let them handle it. Because even though this is a voluntary situation for us, and we take it seriously, to people out there, we're officials. And so if you say to someone, oh yeah, I'll take care of that for you, they're expecting you to do something about it. So the best thing that you can do is say, I will turn this over to staff, and most times they will say to you, well, I've called, I've tried. And I think that they have a right to call us, and that us following up on it for them is a very positive thing, and we'll oftentimes get responses, but try not to explain it to them yourselves, just for your own protection, okay? Anything else? You've been here a minute, so anything else you want to add to that for the new people?
Oh, no, I think you've covered the
Okay, great.
things that usually happen.
All right. Now, we will, a couple of things. I understand that Miss Glenda Jemison is here.
Oh, wow.
Where? Would you stand? Oh, hi, I didn't recognize you. Cosmetology Board past chair. Glad to see you. Thank you so much for coming. Times they are changing. We have had Dudley Moore leave us, and then Mr. Coons, and a third person I can't remember. So we've all been here for a little bit of time. For those of you who don't know, we changed in, what was it, 2005? That you all adopted us?
And it's been good.
It's been wonderful. It was a shock to us in the beginning, but it's been really great. That's right. I am interested in the new people that we see. We are very proud of you for coming. So can I ask someone to introduce I assume you're students, so if you can stand and tell us who you are, and then have your students stand so we can see your presence.
And if you don't mind, if you'll grab that microphone at the front and so everybody can hear it, because I hope you guys told people where you were today. You didn't, they see you now.
How's everyone?
Great.
Fine.
Great. Well, on behalf of Maestro's Barber Academy, my name is Errol Shaw. These are my students that attend our school. They are accompanying me here today. I was invited by Miss Rebecca, and we're just looking forward to spending time with you guys today. I have big students that have just started with me, and then I also have students that are getting ready to graduate, and have some that are actually getting ready to take the exam like in a couple of weeks.
Wow. So what city?
We are actually from Houston, Texas.
Oh, how
Yes.
nice that you came all the way up.
Great group.
Yeah, thank you. For those of you who are just starting, we are so proud to see you choose barbering as your profession. It's a worthy profession. For those of you who are about to enter the real world, congratulations and good luck. And particularly those of you who are sweating it right now because the exam is coming up. You've done the work, you'll make it fine. Mr. Lane?
There's another school.
Are there-
Yes.
Oh, okay, I
have
see
one.
somebody in the back. But no, I don't want you to speak. I thought you brought, do you want to introduce your school?
Yes, I was going to do it, but I
Okay.
was going to give another school.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, I'm Kevin Lane from OG School of Hair Design. We're in Killeen, Texas, next to Fort Hood, which is the biggest post in the free world. So we deal with a large populace of military people and civilian people. And my people are here. Could you stand up? And we come all the time. We try to come all the time to all the board meetings. So this is just us. This is a new generation of barbers that I'm bringing through. But we've came ever since the beginning or inception of TDLR to all the board meetings. So we look forward to working with you, working with Mr. Francis, Lady Chair, and the new board members.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there another school here? I thought you said there was. Yes, no? Okay. Oh, very good. Okay, come up and introduce yourself.
Don't be shy.
Good evening to everyone. Good morning to everyone.
Yes.
I'm Kevin Howe with Franklin Institute. I'm a barber instructor and shop owner in Houston, Texas.
Very good. We're so glad you came. To the students, we're really glad to see you here. And we hope that you'll come even when you're out of school. Decisions about you and what you do and your industry are made here. So that one of the reasons we have public comment and we send out the agendas early is so that if you have a concern or an opinion on something, you come and tell us. You're out there every day, and so there are things that sometimes we may miss or not understand from your perspective, and you do have a voice. This overall we've already started now, but for the next time, these forms are always over on the table. There are two things over there: the agenda, so that you can follow what's going on. Because when I first started coming to the meetings, I didn't have a clue. So the agenda will help you. The second thing is there's a public comment form. You can't speak unless you filled it out. You filled it out and give it to Ms. Tamala Fletcher over there. You tell us, it basically asks you what are your concerns and what do you want to talk about. The public comment session is at the very beginning of the meeting so that we can hear everything that you all have to say. And as you just heard, if it's not on the agenda, we can't discuss it now, but we can place it on the agenda for the next meeting. If it is on the agenda, then you've had an opportunity to give us your perspective. And sometimes you offer a perspective that we have not considered, that we have not thought of. Your board is made up of barbers, barber owners, barbershop owners, and of barber school instructors, so that we have a cross perspective of the things that you all are going through. But I want you to know that you are welcome here, and please keep it in mind, once you do become full-time barbers, so often the students are all geared up, but once you get busy, you don't come. And this is too important to your life for you not to be here, to weigh in. The second part is that there is a legislative process that happens at the Capitol each legislative session, making decisions. You need to keep up with that, because that's where the decisions are made about your life. So I'm really glad you're here. I think we all are. And we just really encourage you to please make the commitment to try to come each time notices are sent out. We have these meetings on Mondays just because of you. We made it on Monday so that you would be able to come when you are in your profession. And that was a major point of discussion when we first got to TDLR. But we insisted that it be on Monday so that there would never be a reason for you not to be able to be here. So welcome, and I want you to know that you'll get a chance to meet us at break time or whatever, and we're accessible to you. We're really thrilled that you are here. Now, moving to our next thing on the agenda. Are there any other agendas still left over there? If there are, if you want to follow us, please feel free to pick up one. We've had our training, and now we're on the approval of the minutes. Everybody has the minutes?
I need to abstain from.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay, very good. You all have your copies of the minutes to look, because you're the ones that are going to be voting on it. You all read, you've read it? Okay. That was quick. Okay, if you're ready for the question. All of those who are voting, are ready to approve it, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone who has a correction? Okay, all right.
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
did we get a motion from somebody already?
He did,
Or the
yes.
president? And who seconded the motion?
She did.
Okay, thank you.
Motion.
Now it's official, okay,
Thank you.
sure. And Ms. Tamla, this email is a part of our public comment that you gave? Do you want me to know about this? This is for us to deal with later. Okay. Okay, thanks, just got in by accident, all right. Okay, now we're ready for public comment. The only one that I have is from Mr. Kevin Lane. Do you see another one? Oh, I see, okay, thanks, got it.
Mr. Lane, we just kind of got you.
In limbo.
You good, you good, all right.
Why you in the front row?
Let the student go first.
This is a student? Okay, no,
If it is a student.
no, this is Mr. Gary Williams. Ah,
Yes.
you are a student. Come on up.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I just wanted to actually just give kudos to my instructor, Mr. Errol Shaw. He's taught me a lot since I've been in his school. since I've gone through the program. I'm about to graduate in about 2 months, and I'm about to take my test in a couple of weeks. And through his tutelage, through his training, it's been an experience. It's been a great experience. And I just wanted to tell him thank you, and just to, give him propers, as you would say, because without him, I wouldn't have gotten this far.
Very good, very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, Mr. Lane.
Good morning, Lady Chair, Mr. Francis, all board members, people I haven't seen in a while. And also, I'd like to compliment on the young man that spoke. That was good because he acknowledged his school for pouring into his life. See, because we, a lot of times, as barber instructors, we got to be godly examples to these people and help them be able to make life-altering decisions when it comes to the profession so that they can actually succeed in life. So that's very good. Very good. My name is Kevin Lane from OG School of Hair Design in Killeen, Texas. I'm a licensed barber, cosmetologist, and instructor. I have brought up, let me get back to the subject, brought up some points that are of some concerns that have been brought to my attention by some of the students that have went up to the board ever since the beginning, even up until now. And some are in reference to the guidelines, in reference to testing. At some places, at different places, different locations, they're not consistent in the way that they test the people. Some people require them to do a raised outline, some of them don't. Some of them allow even all overs to go, where medium taper is supposed to be the standard haircut. So what we need to make sure that we address here is that we make sure that we keep the board, the integrity of the board, the testing site and everything, especially for us teachers. It makes it hard for us because we teach the people according to the guidelines, and then when the people come to the board, then it's contradictory to what's being taught. We know the guidelines, we teach the guidelines, but it's not being enforced by the board or by PSI, should I say. Not the board per se, but PSI. So we need to make sure we deal with that. The second matter that I had on the agenda was I'm wondering if this is basically a question and also something that needs to be addressed. I've had some students come to my school that have attended another school, and I won't even give names, but they've attended another school and they're being charged 40% of their tuition withdrawal fee to leave the school if the school is not teaching them properly. If the school is not teaching you properly and they're not getting the proper education they need to get, and they're sitting around doing nothing, cutting no hair, not being taught anything, and the student is dissatisfied, they shouldn't have to be penalized to leave the school. So this is something that needs to be addressed very seriously because a lot of students are being taxed. They have contacted the board, but as we well know, a lot of times it's prompt this, prompt that, wait. So therefore people get frustrated and they believe that the system is not working for them. So therefore I'm just bringing those points out because they're very, very important if we're concerned about the welfare of these students in here. That's the reason why we're all here, is for these students and the welfare of these people and to make sure that they can succeed.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Anybody need any clarification? Okay.
So, Mr. Lane, you're saying that as a student transfers and comes to your school, that you're seeing that they are being charged?
They're being charged 40% of their tuition to withdraw from the school. 40%. And they're basically dissatisfied with the training that they're receiving, which is none. So therefore, they're being taxed to leave.
So your main concern is the charge or the training?
The training and the charge. But I can't control what a school does for as a training, which we know the training is what we're supposed to be doing. If we're not going to train, then we shouldn't be a school.
Correct.
May I ask a question?
Should let him finish. Did you finish?
Yeah, and then the other thing is that the student shouldn't have to be taxed to leave the school.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I'll just kind of chime in here. You know, I know we have our rookie member up here, Mr. Jemison. But we have to be careful during the public comment period. It is the time for the public to come and speak, and then we gather information. We can't have the back and forth dialogue.
Okay.
I didn't interrupt Mr. Jemison because he was still staying on point. He didn't change the dynamic of that conversation. So I just want to make sure that the board is aware that during the public comment period, Mr. Lane's doing exactly what he's supposed to do, bringing things to our attention. I'm going to make sure that before he leaves today that we get the names of those individuals for the enforcement cases so we can put that on a faster track if we're not doing what we need to do there. And of course, Ray's already gathering the information on which particular sites we'll gather and identify which ones are being inconsistent so we can take care of that as well.
Aren't we allowed to ask questions for clarification though?
You can, but we know that based on just kind of you and I, you know, our Perry Mason days and our Ironside days, that our questions really become more of a dialogue and an exchange. We just have to be very careful about that during the public comment period.
So is Ms. Jamison allowed to ask her question?
We'll see where her question goes,
Yeah.
and I'll
She's
let
been
our,
around for a
I'll
while.
let our general counsel decide to chime in. I just wanted to.
I usually try to just not talk because it's too much, it's too interesting, and you really want to get in there.
Exactly, you want to engage.
Exactly.
Right.
But just just so that I understand, because I don't know if actual rules apply to this. These schools have a contract that these students sign when they join the schools that say that if you leave for any reason, for example, you're going to be charged 40% of your tuition. And the student agrees to this.
Is this a question?
This is the question.
What was the question? That was a statement. What was
That-
the
yeah.
question?
Let's,
Is there?
if this is something that we want to discuss, refunds and that, all that type of stuff, let's
Okay.
put it on our next agenda.
Yeah,
Okay.
we can definitely do
Okay.
that, and there are provisions for refunds, and we will make
So
sure.
it does have to do with the rule.
Yeah.
Got it.
We'll definitely make sure that we
Got
talk
it.
to Mr. Lane after the meeting.
And that's one reason, I'm gonna just throw this out there, that's one reason why I even brought it up, because I know that those type of guidelines are not the guidelines in which the state
Makes
has
sense.
always done in the past. So therefore, it needs to be brought out because it's unethical,
Okay.
period.
All right.
And we're looking out for the welfare of the student.
So then at the end of this, we can talk about making it an agenda item, but yeah.
Right.
So, thank you for your question. Oops.
Thank you very much.
Oh, sure.
Ms. Lane, thank you as always.
Thank you.
Now we have our staff reports. I'm looking forward to this. Mr. Executive Director.
Madam Chair, Brian Francis, Executive Director with TDLR, and it's been it's been humbling and exciting to take the helm. As you know, Bill and I have been a partnership for years, and now he comes back about once every month just to taunt me. He'll come back in shorts and flip-flops and let me know what the good life looks like. It's amazing to be in this seat. As my dad told me when I took over, he says, Brian Earl, now, I know you thought you were running that place when Bill was there. He said, but you were just making suggestions. And Bill has to make decisions. And he had to sleep with those decisions. And that's really been the big change. Everything goes home with me now. And whether it's a salary increase, whether it's a personnel action, whether it's a decision on a legislative matter, they all go home with me. And so everyone's asked me, how's the job? And I'm like, heavy as the crown, baby. Heavy as the crown. But I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change it for anything. I'm honored to be in this role. I want to do a few introductions because it's been a while since you guys have met, and I know that there were some concerns from some of the folks in the barbering industry thinking we don't love you anymore. We love you enough not to bring you up here when there's no work to do. You guys are volunteer members, and we want to respect and honor that. But trust me, after every legislative session, as you know, we're going to get you busy, and we're going to be working and having probably about 3 or 4 meetings going over the next 18 months. So we'll be busy again and cranking it out. But it was not an issue of lack of respect. It's respecting the fact that you have businesses, you have priorities. Mr. Lane always brings up some great things that we need to be focused on. But by and large, the boat is moving well. The ship is sailing. There's no, little cracks or creases in the hull, so it's staying afloat. And we didn't want to change that and mix that up a little bit. But there are a lot of changes in the organization. I have a new me. My deputy, her name is Carla James. She's listening right now, and she's back at the office holding things down. And it's really been incredible having her on board. She's been with me since December 15th, and she is everything that I am not, but more. She is sharp. She is tough. She's intelligent. She gets things done. To my left, I have Nick Boenis, who's our chief of staff, who's also new to our organization. So you got this triumvirate up here with myself and Carla and Nick, and kind of running the agency. And I just want to introduce Nick and let him say a few things.
Thank you, Brian. Madam Chair and members, it's an honor to be here. It's been kind of a whirlwind. I think last week Carla and I started on the same day in December, so we made it to 6 months, and we look forward to a much longer time with you. And just wanted to say we've got a great bunch of folks, an incredible staff, a great team that is dedicated and passionate about what they do, and it's an honor to be here. This bunch is so well respected at the Capitol and around town that you would be very proud of. So it's great to be here, and thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thanks a lot. Madam Chair, the legislative process was very, very busy. I want to point out a few people that were instrumental in it. Obviously, it's a team effort here at TDLR, but I want to acknowledge our two government relations folks in the back, Michael Kelly, stand up, and Eric Beverly. Eric is a new face to you. Michael is an old face, but he's now fading. His last day with us will be June 30th, and Mike has seen us through a lot of legislative sessions, so we're going to miss him tremendously. I also want to acknowledge Mary Winston and Colleen Tran. They were part of our legislative team as well. Give a holler. I know we've got a couple of new inspectors for some of you. You know, the guy back there trying to compete with the best beard in the house, Lance, back there, he's just kind of scoping through, and Roy back there. These are the inspectors for the school side. Delinda, I'm sorry I didn't see you on the other side. How are you doing? These are folks that do the inspections for the schools over here. Who else? And Jerry? Ramon? Oh, he's handsome. Ramon is handsome. I'm surprised there's not just like a light shining on him. You know, Ramon doesn't play. I usually leave the room when Ramon walks in. It's like, this is not even a competition. He's high-fiving over there. Well, Madam Chair, I want to give you an update of the legislative session. I'll have Tamala pass some information out to you. This, by and large, was the most comprehensive and busiest legislative session that TLR has ever had in our history. And that's saying a lot.
That's saying a lot.
That's saying a whole lot. We were in 65 different committee hearings in 20 different committees. So I'll just kind of let that sink in a little bit. We were present and engaged. And it's not just a matter of being there at the committee hearings, but it's being prepared to deal with the questions that could come about from those hearings. There's a lot of work that goes in advance of it, whether it's studying the bill, whether it's studying the cost estimate, which is determining how much the bill will cost if it's implemented or goes into effect. There's a whole lot of work and a lot of people back here that cranks it out. But it was extremely busy. One of the things I wanted to do to change things was I wanted to get a few more people involved than Bill and I had historically had involved in the process. So we had about 15 or so people that were trained and ready and available at those committee hearings. So it wasn't just Brian sitting in the seat. It wasn't just Carla sitting in the seat. We had a team of folks. And I think in the long run, that's going to serve us well by having that bench strength of people who are knowledgeable, but also who are prepared to face the heat that comes from a legislative session, because it's not easy. It's not an easy process to prepare yourself and steel yourself for those moments.
I've observed you all doing that. That's going to take all the fun out of it. Your team has always impressed me because no matter what they ask you,
They're ready.
I've been there when you were dealing with another commission, answering all those questions and the details, and then ours comes up and you answer all in terms of exact budgets and all these things. So it's you're taking all the fun out of it.
We still had those moments. Now, you know, there was one particular hearing I had this session where I was signed up on 14 different bills, and it was involving 10 different programs. And that's just how it shook out, because George was in another hearing on 3 different bills. So it was a moment, but it was engaged. It was good. Cost estimates. Part of the legislative process is that for every bill that's introduced, the legislature says, so if we do this, what's it going to cost the state? What is it going to cost the people for us to implement that bill? It's called a cost estimate. We did more cost estimates this year than we've ever done. We did over 219 of those going into the session. Bill tracking, we tracked over 341 bills. And just remember that a bill can be, one word change, or it can be 800 pages. You don't know what the bill's going to look like until you start diving into it. And trust me, by the end of the session, that thing starts expanding because imagine that there are 10 trains leaving the station, and everybody has a ticket on their separate train. Well, at the end of the day, only one of those trains are going to make it. The other 9 people are trying to get a ride on that train halfway down the tracks. So they're running up the side of the tracks trying to jump on board, and that's what the session looks like. People are trying to jump on board to different bills. They expand the concept, they change the concept, and that's where the jousting, that's where you really have to stay engaged in the process, and our team was fantastic in that. As we went through the strategic planning process, and the Barber Board always has a great turnout for our strategic planning process. I know James has come to those meetings when we've held them in the past. Mr. Lane has been there front and center at those meetings, and that's where we ask those 4 questions. What do we do well? What can we do better? If you're a king or queen for a day, what's the one change you would make? And over the next 5 years, what changes do you think are going to impact your industry that need to change the way that we need to regulate? Well, our strategic planning initiatives that come out of that drives our legislative session. This session, there were over 6,600, actually there were precisely 6,631 bills filed, and about 1,208 bills that were passed. It's about a 19% pass rate. We went into the session with 56 strategic initiatives, and 52 of those passed. It was a 93% pass rate, and that's incredible. It's absolutely incredible, but it's because we do all the advanced work. We talk to the different industries, not just this one, but all of our programs. We ask them, what can we do better? And we honestly want to know, and of course, Mr. Lane's not shy about telling us what we can do better. But he'll also tell us what we do well, too. But that's part of the process. That's part of sharpening. That's that iron sharpens iron scenario. And so we thrive off that. So when we take our strategic initiatives to the legislature, they know that they've been vetted. They know that these ideas come from the ground up and not just off the top of our head. And I think that gives a lot of credibility and validity to the process.
Congratulations on your success rate.
Woo!
And also.
It was incredible.
It was good.
Incredible.
And also for taking this public forum to let people know the importance of those strategic meetings, that you actually do listen to us and take our recommendations forward. That's key.
The meetings are so valuable because a lot of people think that it's the final report that is the product, but it's not. It's the process. It's the dialogue of knowing that you can come and talk to us. We're listening, and those little bit of tidbits of information and dialogue help us in the conversations. Well, what do my constituents want? We're able to talk about it and say, well, we spoke to one of your folks that's out of Clean. We spoke to one of your folks that's out of the Houston area, and here's what we're hearing from the barber schools. Here's what we're hearing from the barbers. And that goes a long way in those conversations, which are happening at lightning speed. If you look at the document we placed in front of you, this one here, first one, the strategic initiatives, I just want to highlight a few of those. We had a big emphasis on deregulating. TDLR has a lot of programs, and we'll touch on that, a lot of programs under our watch. And so we identified a number of programs that we felt like did not need to have a statewide license. And they didn't need to have the statewide presence. And one of those was vehicle protection product warranters. Doesn't impact you, but if you're familiar with the club that's in your car, that's a vehicle protection product. VIN etching on your car is a vehicle protection product. We said they don't need to have a statewide license anymore. Yes, the protections of making sure the contract's in place, the rescission rights are in place, the ability to refund it's there, but you don't need to come to TDLR to get a license. The same thing for temporary common worker employers. That's the day laborers, but the ones you see like in the middle of a city, pace setters, and those groups, we said they're better regulated at the municipal level instead of the state level. And so we made some suggestions and recommendations. Legal service contracts is another one that we felt like prepaid legal contracts, if you've seen those before. That's a group that we're like, they don't need to have a statewide license. Let's make sure that they have the provisions for the contracts in place, but that's something we can take off our plate. And the bottom line was, we knew the legislature was going to push some stuff to us. So we needed to clear our plates. we need to have some space for these other things to do, and that's kind of what that dialogue was involving. You're familiar with the lawsuit that we're involved in since 2008 dealing with threading. We didn't prevail in the courts on that. Last session, we went to the legislature and said, hey, how about you just go and dereg that thing because we're going to continue to get sued over that and not win. So this session, the legislature moved forward with deregulating threading, and we were fine with that. There was a national movement. I think there's only 5 states in the U.S. that regulate shampoo apprentice. And so that was a provision that we took out and said, don't have a statewide license for shampoo apprentice. I will tell you that there are folks on the cosmetology side and some of the barbering side that were holding tight to that. Oh my gosh, we got to have shampoo. And I think their fear was that the camel's nose under the tent if this thread comes out. I didn't share that fear. My thought process was that if that's what they want, then let them have it, because it's really the Class A barber license that's sacred for this industry. It's really the operator license that's sacred for the cosmetology industry. And as you may be aware, Senate Bill 1087 was filed and it was only impacting cosmetologists, but it would have lowered their hours from 1,500 to 1,000. That's a game changer, folks. That's a game changer. I think we'd have been in line with maybe 4 or 5 states that had that. And I can tell you that it was highly debated, highly contested, and it didn't impact the barbers, but it would have. If that bill had passed, you guys would have some decisions to make, because I know the school owners in here are realizing that there is no way that they would have financially been able to compete with a cosmetology school having 1,000 hours and a barber school having 1,500. And it just kind of points to what the chairman was saying, is that you've got to keep an eye on this legislative process. TDLR, during the legislative session, we publish every bill that's out there. We don't take a position on it, but you can go to our webpage and know each bill at its stage, where it's at in the process, and be engaged in it. And I would encourage you folks that are in here, the students and those that are listening, that's what that section's for. That came about because of Joe Shirley. Joe Shirley worked with Senator Corona years ago and said the legislature needs to have TDLR to keep us informed of the bills. And we're like, man, that's not our job. It became our job. And it's one of the best things that we do now, is putting that information out there for all of our licensees. That's the type of change that you guys can bring about that can impact not only your industry but other industries. Madam Chair, I want to touch a little bit on the second page of that document, House Bill 2738 and 2739. One of the things that came out of the strategic planning process was there were a number of community colleges on the cosmetology side that said we need to fix this thing. If we're doing credit hours and the school's doing clock hours and we have students that move back and forth, it was confusing and it was putting students at a disadvantage. And so apparently it became one of the most popular bills in the session. But what it does is it gives TDLR the ability to work with the advisory board. So we'll be working with the Barber Advisory Board and the Cosmetology Advisory Board to create a formula that will allow us to convert from a student who is in a clock hour scenario to a credit hour scenario, or a credit hour scenario to a clock hour scenario. Doesn't impact the barber board yet, or the barber industry. But if you have high schools that are coming on board, which we always know that's one of your big things that we need to have, this is going to position us well for those scenarios. So that's a big one, and that'll be work that'll be coming from you guys and working through the rulemaking process. Madam Chair, I'd like to go to this document here. We good? So one of the strategic initiatives that we were moving forward with, it was involving specialty schools. So the lawsuit involving hair braiding a couple of years ago, we lost that lawsuit because the school said, why should I have to have 25 students, 10 chairs, X number of sinks if I'm only going to do hair braiding? And the court said, yeah, that's disproportionate to what that school needed. So we went to this session saying, let's take out those specific requirements for specialty schools and give us the flexibility to decide what a specialty school needs. So it just gave us a cushion and flexibility to work with that. Remember that those trains leaving the tracks? Well, Senate Bill 2065 was a huge train. And by the end of the session, that bill started off as TDLR's train. And it had like 9 or 10 standard deregs, legal service contracts, booting, it had the shampoo apprentice, the threading, just all the vehicle protection product warranters, temporary common workers, were all on this one train. And then all of a sudden the horn tooted. And you started getting a bill for notaries. And you got a bill for title attorneys. And it just started piling on and things started changing. In that bill, at the last minute, there was an amendment that was approved and signed by the governor. And it says, TDLR, you can't have a statutory provision that tells any school exactly how many chairs and exactly how much square footage needs to be there. So that's going to be something we're going to be working with the industry and trying to figure out what that new school process looks like. It's going to look very similar to the Texas Workforce Commission. They have schools, they do auctioneer schools, they do electrician schools, they do air conditioning contracting schools. They don't have statutory provisions about you need to have 1,000 square feet, 2,000 square feet, or 2,800 square feet. So Madam Chair, that'll be something that we'll be working with the board with. You may recall 3 sessions ago when we were able to get the square footage lowered for the barber schools. It changed the whole world. We went from, and Jenny was right there, pushing the alpine angle, but it went from about 43 barber schools, and now we have 78. So that change in 78. That change in square footage made a difference, and it makes a difference in the rural communities where there may only be 600 square feet of space available, and they couldn't get it before because they needed 1,000, or the population said they have 2,000. So this will be a changer. I know that the schools that have currently invested are going to be like, well, what's going on? I also know that the schools that have currently invested are entrenched, and they know how to compete, and they produce fantastic students. And that's, at the end of the day, that's what the measure is going to be, is how do you produce students coming out?
So may I ask for a point of clarification?
Absolutely.
So now there will not be, when this is done and set in place, there will not be those qualifiers anymore of size and number of chairs and number of bowls
That's
and all
correct.
that stuff?
And in fact, the statute says we cannot put a provision in there that requires a specific square footage and a specific number of chairs. Our legislature is very focused and they're very conservative. In this session, and I know we've got some folks from the cosmetology industry. Hey, y'all. We got some folks in the cosmetology industry, and they know that this session was about maybe deregulating the whole thing. There was a lot of conversation about that, and this is part of the, I think, the exchange of the compromise in some of those provisions. So I look at it as a good thing. There is still a requirement for schools. There is still a requirement for the curriculum to be taught. There's still a requirement for the instructors to have the training. There's still a requirement for the examination. Those things are still in place. If you have to give up 1,000 square feet and 10 chairs, I think that's a good exchange. I think that comes out to be a good exchange. But
But
it's changed.
Yeah, I understand. I think it's a good one too. We discussed that 3 years ago.
It's changed,
Yeah, that's
absolutely.
great.
So 2065, take a look in that. You're going to read through 80% of the bill, probably 85% of the bill has nothing to do with barbering cosmetology, and out of nowhere, you get this provision that impacts the schools and it will impact the work that we have to do going forward. Madam Chair, I've got one more document there in front of you. Okay. So this one here, who we regulate, put on your crystal ball, put on your hat, think about the future. We're all going to lose 20 pounds. And if we want to get hair, we're going to get it. If we want to cut it, we're going to cut it, whatever the case may be, whatever our style preferences are. Who we regulate, in September of next year, September 2018, this is who we're going to regulate. The green represents the new programs. Transportation Network Companies is now new to the TLR family. That is the companies like Fasten, Fair, Ride Austin, Uber, Lyft. Those companies now are part of TDLR's regulatory family. That came on May 29th when the Governor Abbott signed the bill. Behavior analyst is going to be brand new to the family. Those are the folks that provide services and training to young people who have autism, and it is a life-changing moment. And hearing some of the testimony from the kids testifying at the hearings, you know, they're 6 years old, and 2 years before that they couldn't speak a word. And now they're up there testifying at a hearing. It was, I mean, I'm hard, you know. It got misty underneath my eye. The sweat was coming underneath there, but I wasn't crying. Come on, I'm hard, man.
Amazing.
Yo, man, I'm from the country. We baled hay when it was like in the squares, in the rectangles. Not that big old
Not the
circle.
round one.
Not that big old circle. We baled hay. We know what's up. Podiatrist. That program is starting on September 1, 2017. So that is what we call a day one transfer. It's coming in. And those are the folks that perform surgery, foot surgery, orthopedic surgery, and that sort of thing. It's a big deal. It's our first medical program that is under TDLR's watch. The programs that are in the red, those are the second half of the Department of State Health Services. So remember last session, there was a bill that said we're going to move 13 Department of State Health Services programs to you. We took on the first 7 in October of last year. This is the second 6 that'll come on in November of this year. And man, I'm proud of the staff. We're ready. We're ready to do it. And you're going to see from the reports for licensing and enforcement and the number of contacts we have not stopped taking your calls. We have not stopped issuing your licenses. We're still holding the SME exam development processes. We're still providing that same level of service to you guys, but our plate is filling up. So we'll be at about 38 programs on September 1, 2018. When Bill and I started back in 1999, we were at 20 programs. We're at about 149 licensees, 145,000 employees, and now we're going to be at about 780,000 licensees and 426.2 employees. But that number will increase as we move forward. Madam Chair, that's all I have for the presentation. Just simply to say it was busy. I'm proud of the staff. We had a lot of success. We're humbled by the legislature saying that TDLR, we can count on you to do more. We will not forget the programs that helped us get where we are. We will also continue to be vigilant and being smarter and better as we move forward with the programs. And finally, we'll have to keep you guys here a couple more meetings, start rolling up our sleeves and have some vigorous discussions about the credit hours, vigorous discussions about the schools and how that's going to work out. There's a lot on the plate. And I think we also just need to have an open discussion about what this legislative session could have meant to the industry. The industry needs to start thinking about how the world is viewing them and just prepare themselves. And that's not ominous. I know I watched a lot of sci-fi movies this weekend, but it's not ominous. It's just staying, you know, and being prepared, just like an examination. Kind of know what's in front of you, and you can anticipate it. And Madam Chair, I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
I have a couple of comments.
Yes, ma'am.
First of all, I remember when it was like 28, and I couldn't imagine how one agency could do all that, and then it went to 32, and I thought, oh, they're busting at the seams. They won't be able to handle it, and now you have 38. I've often said to your staff that I wouldn't last 2 weeks at TDLR. So now I know, don't even apply with 38. My goodness, I wouldn't even think of it.
Hey, we're going to have some postings this summer.
I'll pass. So when you said that the programs are resulting from this session, they only added 3? I've known when they've added like 12 and 15. They only added 3 this time?
Well, it's an accurate statement to say they only added 3 programs.
Okay.
But they made significant changes in our responsibilities. Okay. For example, under the electrician program, they didn't add a new program, but there's a new category of electrician industrial journeyman. So that's a whole new thing, and Ray staff will have to go through the process of building an examination, making sure there's continuing education for it. We'll have to do the programming to make sure that we can issue the license and renew the license and cases. And so there's a couple of new things that they added to expand, just add water and expand, but they didn't change the programs per se. But we got a great staff. I mean, we still got George Ferry back there. We got Tanya over here cranking stuff out. So we're going to be in good shape. Ray's group, and I've told him this directly, that they're going to be at the forefront of TDLR's reputation for success this session. We're going to count on them quite a bit to really knock out the ballpark for us, and I know he will.
The next thing that I wanted to ask you, you mentioned that there's change coming, and we've been seeing this inching our way through several legislative sessions. My question to you is, do we need to make this an agenda item for possibly consideration of having, much like we have our strategic planning meetings, to have open meetings for the industry to come? Maybe even, it may mean traveling around the state, but something that shares with us what you see, so that we can begin to start thinking about this, because often by the time the barbers or the barber schools are bringing it to us, the house is already on fire.
Yeah.
So you've often asked us the questions at the strategic meetings, what do you want to see in 5 years? And I think that sometimes our view is only from deep within the hole looking up. You're on top, and so you see a vast horizon. And I just think that including the students need to be aware of what's coming, because you are the future. And so these things that are sort of wavering now, we've seen that happen. We've seen the barber industry lose some key issues because nobody showed up. Things that your industry has fought against since I was born. And we have always tried to hold the line, and we lost it because nobody showed up. So can we consider having something?
Absolutely, and I think it may still be a combination of combining those moments. So maybe in the strategic planning process, there is a presentation by TDLR that says, here's what we see nationally going on, the trends. And the only hesitation I have in doing that, I would not want to influence that conversation there, because then everybody will be reacting to what I've said versus what they were thinking. So we'd have to figure out a nice way of bringing that dialogue together. But I think that would be the most expedient and
Sure.
cost-effective moment for us to be able to do
Because
that.
of it. Sure, I can see that. And maybe it could launch from the, what do you see in 5 years? You ask us that question, what do we
Absolutely.
want? And sometimes we're saying the flowery, nice things, but you all, one of the things that consistently impresses me about this agency is you do the nuts and bolts. And so I think that we all have our wish list. I'm very pleased that we can now have barbering in the high schools. That took a long time to get to that point. But as we're beginning to see the world change, just like we went through with the testing, everybody was freaked out when we said we were going to do it on the computer.
Oh, man.
And then we finally worked our way through that. But I don't know that without the staff that we would have thought of that, because we had been doing it in the traditional fashion for so long. And we had some bumpy moments, and we still have some issues.
still, yeah.
But, so if we could consider that. And then, when you get these notices about the strategic planning, don't blow it off as if it's just, insignificant. Because when we first started doing that, the house was packed.
Oh, my gosh.
And now you go and it may be 7 or 8 of us. But the future of your industry is discussed and determined at those meetings. And that's a time when the TDLR staff is saying, what do you want? You are the professionals. What would you like to see us do? What's bothering you? What's working? What are we doing well? What should we change, and how? It is your voice, and I can't express that enough. So if we're able to add that futuristic planning, you guys you're behind the chair, and so you see what works and what doesn't. And if I may give you an example, when I was in your seat, when we had a different board situation, we were not part of TDLR at that time, our board was made up of individuals. One was an insurance company owner. That one impressed me a lot, but I don't remember what the others were, but they were not barbers. And we came up with this rule about sanitation, wiping down the chairs in between clients. Now,
I'm not a barber, my dad was, and I'm sitting there thinking, even I knew from when I used to hang out at the shop at 5 and 7 years old, that on a Saturday, nobody is going to wipe down their chair, and you had to wait 4 minutes for the chair to dry, for it to be disinfected. And I'm thinking, this ain't going to work. And they tried it, and of course, the next legislative session, we had to go back and say, can we take that back out? But if barbers had been there, you could have spoken up and said, you know, let me tell you, I can cut 3 heads of hair in an hour, and with what you just did, you're costing me this many customers, 4 times whatever an hour is. I'm not great at math, but it knocked off like 2 or 3 hours of your work time. But that decision could have been avoided had you been there. So when you get those notices about strategic meetings, cross off your calendar, whatever it is. This is your future, this is your income, this is your livelihood, and it's worth your being there.
Me.
Madam Chair, thank you.
May I be recognized?
Sure.
Absolutely. The first exposure I had to the board, actually was to TDLR. I came to a strategic planning meeting here, and it was simply because my entire region of the state was underserved by schools. There was not a school within 300 miles of where I lived. And to see the resulting increase in the number of schools in Texas, and to be sitting on the board. I did not expect, after going to a strategic planning meeting.
Oh, you
that I would
speak
be-
up, we're gonna put you in the seat.
So look out.
So be ready, Mr. Williams.
My term will run out. 78 schools. I'm very, very glad to hear that. And
It's
I
amazing.
think that rather than looking at this it's no longer a reduction in requirements, but flexibility in requirement. I mean, not having the state require chair number and square footage, rather than looking at that as giving something up or as like this step towards the scary deregulation. We're going to give this so that they don't deregulate it. It's more like just offering business owners the flexibility to design the school, the business that they need to serve their needs and the needs of their students.
In their community.
In their community,
Absolutely.
and to make it cash flow, because that's what it's about. We are doing this for the students, we are doing this for the industry, but we're not gonna do it if we're not going to make money at it. I mean, and so you need to be able to have that flexibility. And so this is just allowing you to do the business the way that you want and not having the state tell you how to do it.
The biggest challenge is going to, again, reside with Ray and his folks, because it was straightforward and easy. All right, I take out the measuring thing, I got 1,000 feet. Oh, you're at 500. You know, and then count the numbers. There's no impact, literally there's no impact to the school that's opening up. And their paperwork's easier and they're moving through quicker. They're still going to go identify the qualified instructors. That's where it starts with. A vision and qualified instructors. I mean, that's the key, that's the heart of any school. Mr. Lane said it. But it's worth repeating. His folks have been here since the very beginning, and they see the process. That's part of their educational process. They're learning about the industry and how it affects them. There was no law. Mr. Lane, correct me if I'm wrong, there's no law that says you need to bring your students up here, but you felt that was the best thing for them.
That's correct.
And that's what good schools do. That's what Ariel does. That's what these folks are doing. And so I'm excited about how you phrase it, because reframing it to this is going to free up folks from the business stuff and allow them to focus on the heart stuff, which is how do you teach, how do you inspire, how do you make great barbers? And I see them already sitting in this room. I see them sitting in this room.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, so on the bill implementation, you know, we'll start with our teams, and we do internal teams that will make the process work, but we're looking at probably a September 4th meeting, I believe. September 4th meeting will be the next one. At that meeting, we'll start taking up some information relating to the clock and credit hours scenario. We should probably already have forms up that allow for the schools not to have their square footage identified, because some of those things happen in law. So when you think about the statute this way, there are statutory changes that happen that will require a rule to fix it and clarify it. There are statutory changes that happen, and there may be a rule that's inconsistent, but that law's in place, and it's in place, and the rules will catch up to it. So So we've got a few of those scenarios. We have time to develop the clock and credit hour formula. So we're going to take our time and do that right. On the school stuff, we'll just make modifications to the forms on September 1 to make sure our forms are correctly and accurately reflecting that you don't need to list the square footage. So some of the changes will happen. Some will be involved in rules. Some will be repealing a rule or two. For example, if there's a rule that says shampoo apprentice or threading, those are rules that will be repealed. But the law's already in place on September 1. We ain't not issuing anymore. It's not happening. We'll catch the rules up to cleaning up that process. So you'll see a lot of stuff coming at you. So September, we'll have a meeting, and I think we're looking at it may not be the 4th, Labor Day.
Oh, yeah, well, it won't be the 4th.
Yeah, I'm going to take off too. So it'll probably be September 11th.
Okay,
Probably 11th, and Tam will make sure we get the date to you guys.
sure.
And then we're looking at a December 4th commission meeting. So you'll have another meeting somewhere in November,
Okay,
and we'll get that date to you guys as well.
okay. And the schools receive notification too, right?
Absolutely. The listserv where you sign up
Sure.
to get it, that's still going to be available.
Okay, very good.
Madam Chair, I'm available to answer any other questions if there are.
Anyone has any questions? Chili?
Yes.
Okay, the Compliance Division.
Good morning, Madam Chair, advisory board members. My name is Marina LaFleur, and I'll be giving the Compliance Division report today. Compliance has attended many trade shows since the last advisory board meeting. Elizabeth Pettis, David Gonzalez, myself, and staff from Enforcement, Education, Examination, Field Operations, and Customer Service have all contributed at these shows. Here we answer any industry-related questions. Thank you. Provide any information on license renewals and offer any other assistance asked of us. Facebook and Twitter have also been used to let the industry know that we are there. This increases our interactions with our licensees. In 2016, we attended the shows of Image Expo, TIVA, Armstrong McCall, the Natural Beauty Culturist League in Beaumont, and Image Expo in Dallas. In 2017, at the beginning of this year, we've attended TIVA, Armstrong McCall in Arlington, Image Expo in Houston. Elizabeth, David, and myself continue to contribute to the PSI Barber examination reviews, which have all been held here in Austin. In 2016, we attended the exam reviews in the months of March, June, and October. In 2017, the earlier part of this year, we attended meetings in February, March, April, and June. Our next PSI exam review is scheduled for July. Elizabeth and myself continue to assist enforcement, field operations, and customer service with any questions that arise during investigations, inspections, as well as address any daily industry concerns and emails. We also attend the barber and cosmetology task force meetings that are held periodically. We have an upcoming event that Elizabeth and I will be attending, which will be the TIVA Summer Conference, which is held July 17th through the 20th, and that will be in Irving. So that ends my report. If you have any questions, I'll be more than glad to answer anything that you have.
Sounds like you've been busy.
We have been busy.
We appreciate that.
Been very busy.
Any questions? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Education and Examination Division.
Thank you, Marinelle. Good job.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Advisory Board members. My name is Rebecca Adamus. I'm the Education Liaison for TDLR. I just wanted to start off by saying hello. Some of you I've seen before, and some of you are new faces to me, so welcome to the family. One of the things I also wanted to point out to you is we do have one barber program in a high school that started in September.
Oh, you made me so happy. Where?
La Grulla in Rio Grande City. So there, the Valley has been the pioneer, per se, in getting their first barber program in the high schools, and it's encouraging, and we're hoping to add some more.
Woo, Ooh, you just made her day.
I'm telling you, and I'm thinking.
I thought her little hair was gonna pop up.
I'm
It's
sitting here
gonna pop out.
I'm sitting here thinking, can I ask, I wanna go visit. I would really like to
So
visit.
Well, you know,
I am
and
so
as
excited.
an education liaison, I can coordinate that visit and you and I can go together because
I
I
would
haven't,
love
I
it.
haven't gone, so we'll work that out for
Okay.
sure.
Make a note.
I will.
Thank you. Oh, it makes me wanna cry, that is wonderful.
Another thing I wanted to share is, yesterday I had the honor, and I was honored and humbled to speak at a cosmetology graduation in San Antonio. And I echoed your sentiments as far as it didn't matter whether you were just starting or whether you were coming into the industry. It is your industry, be involved. And that's something that I also echo at all my school visits when I speak to the students, because you're absolutely correct. They are the voices, they are the voices of change. They are the ones that protect your industries, and they're the future. So I'm glad that I'm echoing your sentiments when I go out and that I'm doing, you know, what is charged of me to do. And so in our report, I just wanted to kind of share a few things. We are growing. Our education and examination division has grown by leaps and bounds, actually. We went from 7 to now there's 18 of us. We're now in a few different departments. Enter our division, we have a driver safety and education team, of course our inspection and site visit team, and the education and examination support team. And each one of us has been extremely busy with these new programs that are coming in. We have exam development that I am still a part of. Mr. Lane, there is a representative from PSI here today that I will put you in contact with so you can discuss your concerns, and we'll get you taken care of.
I got her number.
We do meet, as Marinella said, we do meet various times a year with our subject matter experts to make sure that this examination is, setting the standard for a minimally competent candidate entering the field of barbering. We have a few other just additions to our staff. Like I said, we've grown, so you'll see that in our report. We've got statistics there for you. So I am free to answer any questions if you have any on some of the statistics.
Well, I have a question, maybe I'm missing it. I was trying to find your report on here, and I didn't see it. Am I missing something?
I think maybe look past enforcement
Okay, hold
and
on.
go to education.
Oh, education and examination,
Yes,
there it
ma'am.
is, okay. So did I skip something?
No, you
Okay,
didn't. You didn't.
okay.
You just highlighted on the record our poor alphabetization, alphabetizing, that's all. Thank you very much.
I did what?
Just said we
Okay.
couldn't put stuff in order.
Oh, okay. But this is, I am, you have, I'm like Brian now, the eyeballs are sweating. You have, done what I joined the board for. It's so critical. It's an avenue for our young people. And the fact that we just could not do it. We came to TDLR in 2005. I began that quest before that. And so this has been a long journey, and to think that it could happen within my time frame, it's just very meaningful to me. And despite the way we got off to a interesting start, we thought TDLR taking over barbering was a hostile takeover. And I was really upset about a lot of things that I've said this repeatedly, despite what we thought of them when we came. It really has been a good move for us. And they listen when you say something, and they work on it, and they don't always tell you they're working on it. So you kind of think it's fallen off the plate. Even the thing about the square footage had been an issue because we need schools and we don't have them. I know you had none, and that's how we met you, but we only had one in Austin on the waiting list that was like 3 years or something. And so this was it. This was the reason. And so I really, really thank you. And I definitely want to talk to you before we leave and
Most
book that
definitely,
trip so
we
that
will
can see
coordinate that for sure, yes.
And if there's a way for us to publicize their success so we can do this more, because the young people deserve it.
Yes, they
So
do.
thank you.
Of course.
And Madam Chair, I think you were kind when you said that you guys thought it was a hostile takeover. My recollection was at the Capitol, sitting in the hallway, and I went over to speak to you, because I'm a Southern gentleman. I went over to say hi, and I knew she was the chair, and I wanted her to get to know me. And she said, they're sending you over here? I said, yes, ma'am. And who are you? I said, well, I'm the deputy executive director. And she said, quote unquote, do you have any power? And I said, don't check with my first wife, but I feel like I'm all right. I got a little stroke, number 2 at the agency, and it was that frankness and that openness in the conversations that I think those are where relationships are built and where they're forged. And, you guys are still high up on my list. I got you up there with the auctioneers and the hearing instrument fitters and the barbers. And now because there's a couple of cosmetologists, I got to say them too. You're high on my list of the programs that I enjoy talking to, because I know where we came from. I know what it started like, and I know what it's looking like, and I know it's going to only get better. So I'm happy for you to have this moment. And
very
Rebecca's
happy
the
to.
person to deliver it.
I can't tell you or thank you enough. For those of you who don't know, the Sunset Commission is a part of the legislative process that decides what stays and what goes. And when they told us we had to demolish the board that we had, it was a tough session. And I had testified, like I said, everybody was hostile, and so when he came over. But it has really been a well-made marriage, and that's why I encourage you all to come. This is where it happens, and it sometimes takes years, but it will happen. So thank you very, very much for your report. It means a lot.
Of course. If there's no further questions, I'd like to bring up our Director of Education, Mr. Ray Pizarro. You have a
Okay.
presentation?
Hi, good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. I'm Ray Pizarro, Director for the Education Examination. Good segue, because it's been now a year where we've put Rebecca Armas in this position as an education liaison. Her role has been going out and looking at all the education providers that we regulate, from barbers, cause schools, driver education schools, and coming in November to massage therapy schools. And we found so many great schools. It's amazing of the work and the education that people are providing to the young students. And at times, the whole role about this was to look at best practices and see things, how people have done some good innovation in their areas, and we saw a lot of that. And today, I'm going to turn this over to Rebecca. We're going to recognize a particular school for their excellence and some of the key things that they've done just a little bit different, and they've taken it to the next level. And with that, I'll just let Rebecca introduce that.
One of the things that I found in my visits is going to this school. This was my first and only barber school that I've been asked to visit, and I was touched just walking in the door. The amount of the smiles, the respect, the visions that everyone has. Walking in, I was greeted by the director, Mr. Shaw, and he gave me a tour, and I saw these vision boards, and I thought that's amazing, because it's their vision, it's their why. You know, why am I given this second chance, and what am I going to do with this second chance? And it really moved me, and I, like Brian, I could be hard too.
Right.
And behind the eyes they were sweating, yeah. But it was inspiring. And also while I was there was an individual that came in that said, I believe in this student, I want to sponsor their tuition. And you don't hear that very much. It's like the kindness of humanity is, we've kind of forgotten about that. We're paying it forward, giving somebody that second chance. And so I found that Mr. Shaw's school is inspiring to not only to the barber industry, but to all industries, to everyone. I just want to say a few things. He focuses on educational enrichment, empowerment, preparation and training, crisis intervention, and counseling and support. And to me, those are keys that keeps your students with you, that keeps these young individuals engaged. You know, you knew by the testimony during public comment that, you know, he feels strongly about this industry and the future of this industry to make sure that they come to school and they remember why they came to school every day, and to make it interesting and create a sense of pride. You know, and I was reading the back of the shirt and it says, "My yes starts the road of success." And I love that. So without further ado, we'd like to recognize Mr. Errol Shaw of Maestros Barber Academy for his commitment to local community, providing second chances to at-risk youth and adults.
Okay, now I'm rolling back my sweat. Okay, first of all, I want to say I'm honored to be here today. A lot of faces I've seen here that I've seen before, and this is really about not me, it's my students. A lot of what she was saying is very correct. We chose to open our school up on a very different note. I'm actually a nonprofit organization, and we opened up as a nonprofit organization. One of the things that I experienced as a barber in the industry when I was starting out was that I would cut, and I had so many different individuals that would sit in my chair on a regular basis. And a lot of young men would sit in my chair, and they came from a lot of different backgrounds, but all of them, for some reason, had the same story. And they were coming from dysfunctional circumstances. They were coming from adverse situations and so forth. And actually, when I was younger, because I think I was just about their age themselves when they were having these conversations with me, it really aggravated me until one day I was listening to Mike Murdoch, and he said the problem that infuriates you the most is the problem that God has called you to solve. And it took me a while to get that. But I would say that as I grew in the industry and became more aware of my surroundings and the individuals I was working with, and I began to think less of myself and more of the individuals that were sitting in my chair and the purpose that was on my life, I was able to do what a lot of people are still, I'm blessed to be able to do what a lot of people are still trying to do. That was to take my gift and my purpose and be able to serve people with both of them. And that's what we're doing at Maestros Barber Academy. Once again, this is about the students and all the individuals that have poured into my life and those that have have helped Maestros as a family get to where we are right now. I'm so proud of each and every student I have here today, even the ones that are viewing and the ones that have come through the school and have gone on. They are like, I never thought that I could love other individuals as much as I do and enjoy doing what I do on a regular basis. It is a joy for me to get up and go to work. It is. When we are in that classroom, I choose to be in the classroom. Not just be an owner of the school, but I purposely choose to be in the classroom and work with the students. This is not your first time seeing me, and will it be your last time seeing me here? I am moved by everything I've heard. I love this industry, and the same passion that I have, I try to pour it back into my students. And they know it, like on a daily basis. I let them know I will give you whatever it is you ask for. Just ask. The only way you won't have it is if you don't ask. And Maestros, it means just that. You know, I didn't know at the time when I was given the name Maestros, M-Y-S-T-R-O-S, we would use it as an acronym years later as My Yes Starts the Road of Success. So I'm so happy for each student that walks through that door and says yes on a daily basis, because that is what causes them to move forward. That's what causes them to advance in their lives. That's what caused them to wake up and say, hey, I can do this. I can really do this. Once again, we focus on individuals. We take everybody, but we focus on individuals that have adverse situations, and they come from out of adverse situations. And I want the ones that don't nobody else want. I like them. I'll take everybody that nobody else want, because they always have a place at Maestros. So once again, it's not for me, but my students. So if you guys just show them a lot of love, I would really, really appreciate it. All right.
Rebecca, I had a question when you were announcing that he was receiving this FAR. We couldn't hear what you said, FAR.
It's TDLR Education and Examination Division would like to recognize Mr. Earl Shaw of Maestros Barber Academy for his commitment to his local community by providing second chances to at-risk youth and adults.
Oh, that was key to hear. Very good. Congratulations. We're very proud of you.
Madam Chair, after the advisory board meeting, we'll make sure that we get pictures with Mr. Shaw, his students, Mr. Shaw, the advisory board, Mr. Shaw, the education examination group, as well as folks over here too. We want to get up in there.
So you all won't be leaving soon.
That's right. That was fantastic. Wow.
That is good. Very good. Thank you. Enforcement Division?
Gotta follow that. Get with Tamala about the scheduling next time.
I understand.
But
We're gonna have to start having meetings with clinics.
But anyway, my name is Chris Funderburg. I'm one of the prosecutors with our enforcement division. I'm going to be presenting the division staff report today. You'll see that the division report is split into statistics and also a summary of several representative cases. I think the 2016 statistics are the most useful to the board. While the barbering program is not one of our larger programs, it keeps us busy. You'll see about within fiscal year 2016, about 20% of our cases that opened with the enforcement division came from barbering program. The cases resolved about 15%, and about what is it, $700,000 in penalties assessed. We recovered about 500,000 of that. So a fairly active program. But rather than just read these statistics at you, I think it would be more useful to the board and to our licensees who may be listening in to kind of discuss what it is that enforcement does, because I fear that we may be preceded by a reputation that's more fearsome than I think is necessary, frankly. So what I'd like to do is use the cases in the report to kind of, discuss how enforcement's policies and procedures work. So all licensees are governed by, or licenses are governed by rules and regulations that are put in place by the legislature and by administrative code. Barbering's no exception. When violations of those rules and regulations of the barbering license class are alleged, enforcement comes into play. We receive notification of those allegations through two main routes. First is inspections of barbering shops, barber shops in schools. Those are shops are inspected once every 2 years. Schools are inspected annually. The other main route that we receive notification of these allegations is through consumer complaints. We send out an investigator. Those generally result in, how should I say this? When they generate actual substantive violations, they seem to be more severe. Gross malpractice allegations, injuries, especially in the cosmetology licensing class, these can lead to deaths through infections. But in any case, in either way that a case arises at a prosecutor's desk, there's several paths of resolution available. The first is through dismissal. Simply put, there's not enough evidence for us to proceed on any of the alleged violations, and so the case ends there. The second is a prosecutor determines there's sufficient evidence of a violation, but due to the severity or lack of it, we decide that this is not something that we want to proceed on. The respondent receives a letter of warning them that we could have gone after them, but we didn't. Next time, you won't get a warning. You'll hear from us. But there are certain classes of violations that we never let go. If you've never had a license and you're practicing, you interfere with our investigation. I think I don't know, and if there's a substantial number of health and safety violations, you will hear from us. We put the respondent on notice that those violations that we found through a notice of alleged violation. Now from there, now that the allegation has been substantiated by sufficient evidence, there's multiple paths to resolution from there. Either we don't hear from the respondent, which is frankly fairly frequent in default cases, in unlicensed activities. You'll see that the first case that I've highlighted here on the report, it involves unlicensed persons. They just disappear. We never hear back from them. But that doesn't mean we can't render a final order against them. That's what happened in this case, 2250 for the multiple unlicensed persons on the shop presence. We don't recover that. It's a paper judgment, but we can send the AGs after them if we think if we have enough history on them as a bad actor. Now, so that's if we never hear from them. The second way is that we do hear from them and they say, oh, you got us, we'll settle. And that is how we prefer to settle our cases. We don't, I think one aspect of enforcement that's misunderstood, we are not punitive, we don't have criminal powers, and frankly, we don't seek the same sort of punitive actions that the criminal prosecutors with their police authority do. We would rather ensure that licensees come into compliance and stay in compliance. And the best way for us to do that is to enter an agreed order for a reduced settlement and ensure that they stay on the straight and narrow for the remainder of their licenses with us. And you'll see that this we settle cases with both schools and individuals. The two Barber cases on this report show that while we've found multiple violations with these respondents, we'd rather settle than pursue them in litigation, which is the third way that these cases are resolved. They knuckle up and say, hey, we don't believe that you've got the proof. We got to go ahead to court. The court decides, then that decision is placed in front of the the board that's in charge of regulating. Why am I blanking on this? The big board, and they decide if the judge made it come to correct conclusion. If they sign off on that, if they sign off on the judge decisions, we either let it go or appeal to district court. But I actually don't have any litigation cases that have occurred in the past 2017 or 16 to describe. But I did want to highlight another enforcement action, which is the last case on this report. You'll see that in this instance, an applicant pled guilty to aggravated sexual assault of a child in 2002, released in jail 2014, 2015. He applied for a license. So child sex assault, we don't want you as one of our licensees, at least not immediately. He wanted a license. We litigated it. He lost, and we kept him from becoming licensed. He may reapply. Perhaps additional time has passed at that point that will allow him the benefit of license. Kind of doubt it. But that, I hope, is a thumbnail summary of what we do. Hopefully it will clear up some of the potential misconceptions that exist about our division. I'd be happy to answer any other questions you might have.
I have two questions.
Sure.
But let's start with the second one first. So on this case with the pled guilty to aggravated sexual assault, you talk as fast as I do.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So listen, I don't have a problem with it because people are always telling me, slow down. That's okay. No, it's okay. I just want to be sure that I understood the process because I know that the barber industry is filled with opportunities for second chances.
Yes.
So the person applied in 2002 and it was revoked and sentenced to 14 years in jail, and then in 2014 he was released. And then what did you say after that?
Well, so he was released from jail, and then in 2015 he applied for a license. And I left this part out of the summary. I believe he actually was licensed as a barber prior to the child sex assault.
Okay.
Now, full disclosure, I don't actually, the prosecution of these particular types of violations, or rather applications, denying applications are dealt with by two of our much better attorneys. But I do know that when child sex assaults fit in as a guideline crime, and a guideline crime means that this is something that we do not want to issue you a license if you've been convicted of it. Okay. At least that's the hard and fast rule. Now, perhaps sufficient, maybe the child sex assault was occurred in 2002 and there's sufficient time has passed, maybe we do want to issue you a license. Maybe you've shown sufficient remedial actions that licensure is appropriate in your situation. Kind of hard to justify that in child sex assault, but I think there are other violations that fit as guideline crimes where we very well might issue you a license despite that conviction. I'm sorry, did that answer your question?
You
or-
did, because I was wondering, only because I created quite a stir
Okay.
a few years ago. I made a mistake when we were really trying to clean up the industry from drugs and a bunch of other stuff. And so the question was, if you have been convicted, should you be allowed to get a license? And I took a stand on that. And then people came and testified, and I had to acknowledge that I was wrong. And including one of the people I've known since couldn't even talk when I was a baby. And I was like, well, what are you doing here? And he said, I am a convicted. I never knew that. He's a minister now, and all my life I've known him. He was a minister. And so I have apologized for that, and so now I'm very vigilant in terms of understanding, because I didn't have a real perspective. If you know, I'm not chastising you, I'm only explaining why I wanted to have a clear understanding.
And I think you raised an important point, and one that's kind of close to me, is that how does the state of Texas ensure that people who've been convicted of felonies, who've done their time, come out and are able to gain the employment that they need to stay out?
Right.
Obviously aggravated child sex assault is something that is kind of on the extreme. We have licensed applicants who have been convicted for a variety of felonies, but these are not necessarily felonies that we want to prevent them from gaining, gaining licensure for. I'm sure that there are, and again, I'm not involved with these cases, but I'm sure that there's many other serious felonies that have been committed that nonetheless we've issued license for, because there's been sufficient evidence of remedial action, or there's just been enough time has passed between the conviction and the application.
That was the clarity that I wanted, because Christine used to be the person who would testify here at the meetings, and she helped me to understand. And so I wanted to be sure that I was understanding whatever it is we were doing now, because we do have a responsibility. Our responsibility on the board is to protect the citizens of Texas.
Right.
That's our primary concern, whether it's from bacteria or from felons. And so I understand that. I also understand that barbering is one of the industries that individuals who may have done something when they're young, and this is what I learned from that painful process when I made the mistake, is that there were two people. One was a young man who just literally cried because he thought he was going to have to give up his barbershop, and that people learn by their mistakes, and particularly if it's been a long time ago. So I think that you're right about figuring out what the time frame was. The second part of that is that it's an industry where a lot of people who don't have all of the advantages that America has to offer, for them to become their own business owner, an entrepreneur, and to have an opportunity, even if it's renting a booth, they still are their own person. And so I just wanted to be sure that I was keeping up with whatever our thought processes were. So I thank you for answering that.
No, it's my pleasure.
Yeah.
Was there
Any other
Jim?
questions?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Before he goes away too far, I was trying to remember, there's two questions I had, but I forgot the first one, so I'll ask it later. All right,
We're on field operations, Madam Chair.
yeah, my page is missing. I like the hardcore copy, because then I'm not having to flip back and forth, but great.
I understand. Good
Just
job,
tell me,
Chris.
do you have the second page? Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Tanya Guthrow. I'm the Director of Field Operations for TDLR. One thing I'd like to mention right away is I'd like to go a little bit out of order. We have an outreach section listed in here, but I'd like to go last, take that last. The first item is our list of most common violations that are found during inspections. One thing I'd like to point out is this is slightly different than the actual reports that are sent to enforcement. These are all the items that we happen to identify while we're out there in the field. As you can see, there's a mix of
sanitation violations, different administrative violations, and as you'll see when we go a little bit further into our report, we are working to try to be proactive when we identify these violations so that we can try to prepare people to be successful when we arrive for those inspections. Our next item is just to update you guys on our mobile inspection. We are completed with our tow mobile inspection form. We have our folks out there doing that. That's for tow companies and tow trucks. We do have several programs that we're working on, and we will get to barbering and cosmetology, but we have made progress. We've got our folks out there actually performing on-site mobile inspections. We're still working on the, with our IT folks on the transferring of the data. We expect that to be done by the end of the month,
Tanya,
and that'll enable.
Excuse the interruption. When you say mobile, you're literally not talking about vehicles. What are you talking
No,
about when you
that's
say mobile?
correct. What I'm talking about is that our folks out in the field, in the barber shops and cosmetology salons, as well as at the towing companies, are able to perform the inspection on site, note the violations, email the report to the license holders, and have the data electronically transfer from that device into our databases.
Oh, thank you for that clarification. I thought we were talking about the mobile shops, and
I know you did.
I
I know
only
you
knew
did.
that we had two. Thank
Yes,
you.
I
Okay,
appreciate that.
so you're saying now that because of I remember when you all gave everybody the iPads or whatever they
That's
were,
correct.
the tablets, and so you're saying now that once they go into a shop and inspect, they can now, instead of writing out the form and all that, you can do it. in
We're
real
testing it
time.
with towing and BSF right now.
That's
Yeah.
To
correct.
work out the kinks on that.
That's right.
And
we
so
can-
you're hoping to bring that to the.
Absolutely. We're on our way.
Sure.
It's slow. It's been a long
Sure.
process, but we're headed there. We're actually, performing, like I said, those on-site inspections where the data's going to be electronically transferred while we're performing those tow company inspections. So once we work out, the details of that process, as you can imagine, it's a little bit complicated.
Do have a question for you. So for those, because barbering is a field that people rarely retire from. I know them to be literally carried out on a gurney
Yes.
from personal experience.
Yes.
So those who are not hooked up to
Mhm.
social media and electronics,
Sure.
are you still going to give them the paper version, or what happens?
Yeah, there may be a delay of like 24 hours,
Sure.
where we can actually get it in the mail to
Okay.
them. We will give them something to indicate that inspection has occurred. And so they're gonna be able to access it, get it, if they don't have an email account, then we are gonna work on actually mailing the report to them.
Very good. I
Yeah.
just didn't want them to get forgotten.
No,
to be
not
forgotten.
at all. So, yeah, we're excited about that. Also, I have here a summary of our mini salon, mini barbershop roundups, which is a process where we're coordinating the inspection of all the mini salons, mini barbershops in one location. This helps ensure that the inspectors maximize their time and reduce travel. So what we do is not like we do for a tow company roundup, or a tow truck roundup. We set a particular day and we go to the salon gallery, and they know we're coming, and so we perform that inspection and try to make sure everybody is there on site, available to have their inspection done. And so we've had quite a bit of success in getting those inspections done that way, rather than having to come back every other day for somebody who didn't, wasn't available for the inspection that day. Does that make sense?
That's interesting. So they know that you're coming, so they know to get it in order.
They do get a heads up for that, but then again, I will say, ironically, we're still finding violations, so.
Okay.
The information that we provide to them when they know that we're coming is the same that is available to anybody else, The inspection that we perform is the same that we do for anybody else.
Oh, I know it would be the same. The difference is on
Yeah.
the others, you just pop up. True, or do you notify everybody?
Absolutely, you're
Okay.
right, we do
Yeah.
just pop up, and there is a trade-off here
Sure.
that's happening, but we
Sure.
feel like, we've been able to perform a number of inspections and provide a lot of education for folks too, in
Okay.
doing this. We're gonna skip our outreach section and go on to personnel. We've had several updates in personnel since last time we spoke to you guys. I want to mention Jorge Vega, who we hired, and he's working out of San Antonio. and is doing a great job. Also, Adriana Gonzalez was hired to replace Ruby Ochiltree, who moved to E&E. She's been with us since July 1st. Also, we've got several open positions right now. We're waiting to be able to post and hire some more inspectors throughout the state.
So how many will we have total in the
Well,
state?
that's a great question. I know that we've got.
How many inspectors do we have in the state, Barbara?
Oh, just looked at the work chart.
Yeah, we've got a total of 36 folks in our division, but I think we're.
And Tanya will be getting 5 more. I think it's 5 more that we've identified.
Yeah,
so.
we'll talk
You
about
kind of
it.
put me on the spot here, but that's good.
No,
That's
I
good.
think
No,
we'll-
it's one of the areas that we're going to definitely overfill in
Right. Yeah.
to really make sure that we catch up. So.
Yeah. And we're going to have openings in Houston and the DFW area, mostly, and some in San Antonio. So just to let anybody who's interested know.
Okay.
Oh, in particular, we've been considering something in San Angelo. Just put it out there on the internet. We're recording here. So that's that. Next, we have our inspection statistics, and you can see we've been doing a good job I feel like, performing a good number of inspections and getting that job done. And finally, I guess we're ready to go to our outreach section, and what we're going to show you today is that we've been working on a video, and this is something we'd like to expand on. And this is a video regarding after client foot spa cleaning process, which is a common problem both in the barbering profession as well as the cosmetology selection. I'd like to introduce Jennifer Harless. She's our South Region Manager, and she's worked closely with Sharice Hobson from Strategic and Communication to develop these videos. This is our first one.
Good morning. To provide clear communication, good customer service, and assist licensees, we took a look at some of our common violations, spoke with the inspectors, and found out which violations would be best serviced by an instructional video. The inspectors let us know that one of the things that is most commonly misunderstood are the procedures for whirlpool foot spa cleaning. So TLR partnered with the Aveda Institute of Austin to video foot spa cleaning procedures. We obtained footage to use in a 3-part series that demonstrates the required procedures for after client, the end of the day, and biweekly cleanings. These videos are available in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese. Multimedia technician Sharice Hobson filmed and edited the videos. Field Inspector Jeanette Devasti assisted with filming the video. Field Inspector Quy Tran assisted with the Vietnamese translation and video layout. Compliance Division's Stuart Myrick completed the English voiceover. Field Inspector Abraham Delgado completed the Spanish voiceover. And Customer Services Tu Van Hun completed the Vietnamese voiceover. We are pleased to present to you today the first in the video series, the After Client Cleaning Procedures, and these are now available on our public website.
In this video tutorial, you will learn how to correctly clean a whirlpool foot spa after each client, and how to properly record your cleanings on a foot spa cleaning log. After each client, each whirlpool foot spa needs to be cleaned and disinfected in the following manner. First, drain all the water and remove all the debris from the spa basin. Then, clean the spa basin with soap or detergent and water. You must disinfect the spa basin with an EPA-registered disinfectant with demonstrated bactericidal, fungicidal, and virucidal activity. Use the disinfectant according to the manufacturer's instructions. Finally, the spa basin must be wipe dried with a clean towel. Record the cleaning on the department-approved form with the date and time of each cleaning and disinfecting. Check the appropriate box for after-client cleaning. Complete the record at or near the time of cleaning and disinfecting. For more information, please visit our website at www.tdlr.texas.gov.
And the Oscar goes to?
Any questions?
Very good. Did anyone have any questions? Very good. And so they can watch this on the TDLR site? Is that how they get access to it?
Yeah, we currently have it posted on the Barber homepage and the cosmetology homepage.
Very good. Very good. Thank you.
And Madam Chair, what you'll see over time is, as we continue to see violations in certain areas, we'll develop videos to help people correct those, because our game plan is not to catch people, it's to help them comply. And so you'll probably see a link on those violation pages to a video saying, oh, here's a violation, if you want to know how to avoid that, click on this link, and there's a video that will be just the right amount of time to maintain the attention span of those folks today.
I understand everything you just said. I'm glad to see it because I think it will be great even for the citizens. When somebody tells you, oh, I've cleaned it already, I have made my friends be aware that you have to be cautious. So thank you very much for doing that.
You're very
And
welcome.
for coming up with that concept, that's a great idea.
Oh, well, yeah, it was the inspectors because they have to repeat the instructions, you know,
All the
often.
time.
And so what they're gonna be able to do is actually show the video while they're on site, if they
Okay.
find that violation, so that it'll just help, you know, get people to come to our page, and they'll be able to train their new employees that way, and we're very excited, so.
So TDLR not only listens to constituents, but to the inspectors and your staff too. That is very good, very good. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
May I ask a quick
Oh,
question?
I'm sorry, there is a question, yes.
Just on posting the inspection reports, if they're going to be emailed,
Yes.
are shops going to be required to print them out and post them?
Well, what I would like to do, and it's something we need to discuss with the advisory board as we get closer to the time when we're performing those on-site mobile inspections for your program, I would like for us to move into a different era where perhaps the inspection report is posted online. And there may be a notice that said, if you want to see the inspection report, go to someplace on TDLR's website so that consumers
That's a
can see
great
them.
idea.
You know, we've found that a lot of people, if you're not involved in the industry,
Mhm.
you don't realize that there even is an inspection report posted. It may very well be there, but consumers are not really aware of that. But if we put a sign that said, if you want to see the inspection report, go to TDLR's website, it won't fade in the sun, it won't get accidentally covered up. And, you know, that way, it'll take another burden off of the licensee to have to actually post that inspection report up there. So it's something we'd like to consider.
My hesitation was, there's an age difference here, was for the folk who come into the shop who, in our tradition anyway, knew where it was. But I can see moving to the new paperless version. It will take a second for some folk, but as long as I guess we make the sign clear, because a lot of I was at a bank recently, and an elderly man came in to do his business, and he did have a debit card, so he was more advanced than I am. But when he was trying to do it and would swipe it, he kept looking for the button, and the bank person said, press the green button, press the green button, and we are all hearing this, and the man is getting embarrassed and all that. And I wanted to say, I went over to the manager to say, you need to take into consideration that most of your clientele is above 55. And I said, that button is not green. It has a green circle on it, which young people would know immediately. If you say hit the green button, that's what that means.
Yes.
But he was looking for a green button. Then they
Absolutely.
asked him if he had ID. And he said, well, all I have is my debit card. And I said to her, in our era, the word was, do you have a driver's license?
Exactly. Yes.
So if he wants that, because he keeps saying, any idea, and the members are getting nervous and embarrassed and all that. So, I know that we're all switching to the electronic stuff, and I think that that's a good idea, but at least you're making, room for the rest of the people who don't understand to say that it is available, and even if they don't know how to get it, they can ask a grandchild or a child or whatever.
Exactly, exactly. And we can put a phone number on there so that they
That's a
can
good
call,
idea.
and we can send them a copy if they need to. A lot of folks do want to just do it electronically, but we'll always try to make accommodations.
Sure. We're in that transitional stage. Make room for those of us who are still struggling how to use the phone. So,
Yes, absolutely.
okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thanks. Licensing division.
Good morning, Chair Lady Connor and Barber Board members.
Good morning.
Welcome, Ron. My name is Joyce Hennington. I'm the licensing manager for the Barbering program. First of all, I'd like to point out, you guys all have the statistics, and I'm sure you've noticed each year the number of barber licenses is increasing, so I'm sure you guys are happy about that.
We are.
Well, I'd also like to welcome all of the students on each side, and because of you, that's why the numbers are increasing. So keep up the good work.
Tell your friends.
Yes. Okay, in 2016, there were 9 licenses issued, Class A barber license issued by military provisions. Those numbers weren't in your statistics, so I wanted to point those out. And so far this year, there have been 11 licenses issued by military provision. And today, we seem to be doing a lot of shout-outs. So I want to give a shout-out to my Hair Etc. team. I have a team of 6 people. Those are the people that are analyzing, reviewing the application, and issuing the license. So they are very instrumental in the population growing. So you guys have the numbers. Do you have any questions for me?
Well, give us a second to look at, because you always
Sure.
do such a detailed report. I am really pleased to see that we are growing. So this means now that we have 16,383 licensed barbers in the state of Texas.
So far this year,
This
yes.
year,
And it's going to increase because the fiscal year isn't over until
That's true.
the end of
6 more
August, so
months.
it will be
Oh.
somewhat of an increase.
But it's increased over 2016. I'm saying hallelujah.
Yes.
So that's very good. Any questions?
I'd like to point something out.
Sure.
Just so that we can think about it. For 2 years, maybe more, 0 technician manicurists, 0 manicure instructors, 0 technician instructors, 0 hair weaving instructors, and, junior college barber schools.
Because it's dominant on the Cabo, right?
Well,
That what
who,
you just
who
mentioned.
knows why, but what, are the schools, but the other license types?
Which one?
The weaving, the technician, manicurist, the technician. I just wanted to point out that we're not seeing an increase in those, and just maybe something that we should think about those license types.
Absolutely.
And just wanted to point it out.
As long as we don't take it out of the junior college, or what, now they're not even called junior colleges, we'd like them to at least have that opportunity. I think one of the things we've learned from being here is that when we take something out, it's awfully hard to get it back in. On the manicurist things, I agree with you, if it's not a problem for the industry. Now, at one point, when we looked at that and the thing about the feet, it was presented to the legislature to take all that out. And I'm not challenging you, I'm just
Sure,
saying.
sure.
And the young barbers now have a new perspective. They're making men's salons where the guys are getting all kinds of treatments,
Absolutely.
including facials and all that, and they wanted the right to be able to have it.
Absolutely.
It does become a problem if we don't have instructors to teach them how to do it, so I thank you for raising the issue.
Absolutely.
an eye on it.
And I do not feel like you're, I feel like we're in complete agreement here. What I'm just saying is think about it and also find out from the public. That's why I'm saying it out loud.
Sure.
Like, put it out there so that everybody sees what's happening with these license types. And, you know, Class A barbers are licensed to provide all of those services. So
Correct.
it wouldn't be taking that away. And we have talked about this in testing, that just because a service isn't popular at the moment, for example, when I started barber school, not very many people were shaving anymore. Doesn't mean that it's not going to come back around. So I definitely don't want to be taking something away, but just looking at the license types that aren't necessarily being utilized.
Sure.
And see what everybody thinks about that.
I think that was good. That's why I say I'm glad you brought it up.
And Madam Chair, that's such a good point, because in our society now, we don't focus on the norm, we focus on the outliers. And people will focus on that saying, oh, there's 0, X, Y, and Z, they don't need that. And that becomes a distractor. If it's something that's not used, those very specialized areas, then we may want to just get those off the roll.
Or particularly, once, I feel better when she reminded me that the Class A will still be able to do it.
Oh, yeah, they
Maybe
can do
like
the full
you've
rate
got-
of service,
You
absolutely.
may not need to have a manicurist or whatever it is sitting there, and I can understand that. I do have a feeling about they're not called junior colleges anymore, they're called, what do we call them? ACC
Community
is one.
colleges.
Community colleges.
We'll make sure we get that changed.
Yeah, I would like to at least still give them the opportunity.
Absolutely.
So, okay, thank you.
Okay,
Is
I'd
there
like
any
to
other
say
questions?
earlier, when I acknowledged the students, I'm not sure, but I know I look this way. But I don't want to slide Mr. Lane
Oh,
and his
joy.
students. You're welcome, guys. I'm so
Thank you.
sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'd just like to highlight a few things on Joyce's report.
Sure.
A couple of things that have really turned the corner. If you look at the Class A barber, the percentage of new or percentage of renewal licenses issued online, you may remember that there was a concern about this
yeah.
industry gravitating to that. And we were sitting at 40%, 40%, 40%, and having it at 85.6%, I think is speaking volumes
Yes.
about that industry's acceptance of technology. The other thing I'd point out is look at from 2014, 2,196 students, and now we're sitting at about 2,813.
Now, what page are you
So
seeing there?
I'm on the back side there, and you got fiscal year 2014, the population of students, it's 2,196.
See, our next
There you
page,
go. Okay.
our next page doesn't, you can't tell what it is you're looking
Okay.
at, but okay, go
You
ahead
gotta
and tell
take
me
my word
again.
for it.
Okay, all right. So our
Barbara
population
student.
was 14,000 before, now it's 15, is that what you're looking at?
No, 2,196
Oh, in the
students.
middle, okay, I see.
And now it's up to 2,813. I
That's very
remember
good.
there were concerns back in '09, '10, that this industry is dying. It's not. It's growing at a very healthy rate. And I think a lot of that, you know, is people are, no matter how technological we're becoming, there is a need and desire for that personal contact and that service. There's something about sitting in that barber chair and having that hot towel on your head. Okay, I'm sorry, I digress.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
I think it speaks volumes about this industry and where it's going, and it's an opportunity to really build on that. And I think we're going to see another jump up in the number of schools, you know, with it being at 78. You know, let's get 100. What's wrong with it? If Texas is growing at 600 people per day or something like that,
Let's get one in Alpine.
let's get one
You better-
Alpine.
You should open one.
I know two folks up there. Let's do that.
Well, I think with the new legislative thing that you're saying, because I've talked to people who've wanted to open schools, but the original square footage was a problem.
Yep, ma'am.
And so now it will be much easier, even in your hometown, you could do that and then draw all the people from that 200-mile radius, which would be fabulous. You said two things, and I wanted to address both of them. What was the last?
Oh, I talked about
Oh,
the
about
growth.
the growth. When when we were really sweating that several legislative sessions back, I looked at the labor statistics, and there was one thing that they said, two industries that would never go away and that would never be a problem, and it was undertaker and barbers. And I thought that was really interesting, and it wasn't a joke. They said that those are two things that are always needed.
I believe it.
So, I congratulate
Sometimes they
you
go
all
hand in
for-
hand.
Absolutely, absolutely.
We gotta clean 'em
Okay,
up when
so
they
thank
go,
you
too.
all for that, Joyce. I really appreciate it. Now, let's do the discussion of the 85th legislative session.
Madam Chair, can we take just a 10-minute break?
Yes.
Oh,
And then
that'd be
we'll-
fabulous.
Yeah, I don't know about the rest yet.
Okay, we're going to take a break. It is now 11:20. Can we be back at 11:30? Does that give everybody enough time? Okay, very good. right, the meeting is now called back to order. It is 11:42. We left off with the discussion of the 85th legislative session bills affecting the barbering program.
Madam Chair, Brian Francis, Executive Director with TDLR. So earlier in my presentation for the executive staff, I went through the legislative process. I'm not going to belabor the point much, but I do want to encourage the board members to take a moment just to review the statutes that have passed. And so we're going to have Rhonda kind of go through, bring out a couple of them. When you're looking at statutory language, it is so easy simply to look at the bill and say that's what happened. But you have to remember to look at the bill in context of the existing statute. Statutory change does not happen in isolation. A lot of folks get confused with that and they're like, oh, here's what happened. But you have to look at the whole law and say, how does this new piece fit in harmony with that statutory change? So we'll walk through, and Rhonda's going to make some copies for you of the bill, and we'll just go through a couple of them. They're straightforward bills that we're looking at. Then we'll also talk about the structure of the bill. So you have the enacting clause. That's the part that says this is relating to the credit hours for barbering cosmetology schools. That is that's the neon sign when you're driving on the highway to say that there's a restaurant up. There's a restaurant coming up on the next exit. That's what that enacting clause is. It's to give you enough information where you can make a decision. Do I want to read further or do I want to go further and look at this? But still, when you pull off that road, you have to go to the restaurant and you're going to grab that full menu and you're going to take a closer look at what you want and what you're hungry for. So when you get the bill, the enacting clause, take a look at it, and that should give you a guidepost of this bill is going to talk about this general subject matter, but it's the heart of the statutory language that drives the change. And then most of the time you'll see what they refer to as repealers. And a repealer is exactly what it sounds like. That's struck out the law. But usually it's just the statutory site that's referenced. So you don't see the whole text of what's out there. So when you get a bill, look at the enacting clause, look at the changes. Did they add something with an underline? Did they strike something out with a strike through? And then look at that repealer section. Did they take out whole sections? Because now you're getting a sense of what's not going to be in the law the next time you look at it. When we publish the statutory changes, we're not going to do the strikeout and underline and say, here's what's new, people. It's going to be sans and absent those repealers. So you have to get an idea of what's being taken out. And then the final section of the bill that you're going to look at is the transition clause. And that is the guidance that the legislature will say, hey, Commission, you need to adopt these rules no later than X. That sets our calendar of if X is September 1, then we know that we probably need to have a early December commission meeting to adopt it so we can meet that effective date or the adoption date. And then that means that we're going to have an advisory board meeting probably 25 days before that to review the changes. And then it means that we'll have the comment period 30 days in between there and another advisory board period. And that's how we start building our bill implementation process. We start with the bill is effective on X date. That means we can start working on it. The bill is effective on X date. It means that thing is happening. And it just depends on the context of the bill, depending on whether that bill is going to happen immediately, whether it's going to happen on September 1, or whether we're going to start working on it September 1. In the case of most of these, we're going to start working on most of this on September 1. But on September 1, there's no shampoo apprentice, no shampoo specialty, and there's threading is not covered by your statute. Whether we fix a rule or not, those things will never happen again. That's going to go away. And so the bills that will come before you will have a combination of there's immediate work that we have to do that either happened to us or we got to do something to make it happen, or there is work that we have to do in order of modifying the rules to catch up to the statutory changes. When I look at yours, I think the bigger part of your work is going to fall in the category of the clock to credit hour changes. Just having a pretty good discussion about what does that ratio look like. Other states are doing it. There's already a formula out there. So we're not going to reinvent it, but I think getting an understanding of what that looks like. The scenarios of a student who goes to the high school in the Valley, but then transfers to a private school. We need to make sure that school, you can hand those out if you don't mind, Rhonda. We need to make sure that school does not have to go back and start doing attendance and clock hours. Because they had a policy for credit hours. And then that converts to however many clock hours they have. So we'll take a look at this bill here, and this is what we call statutory 101. And then you guys are gonna go home and do your homework, okay?
So we are.
Thank you very much. So let's take a look at Senate Bill 1502. So the enacting clause, or the relating clause, I'm sorry, is relating to the regulation of barbering and cosmetology. Now, in the legislative world, that's wide open. It could have been anything and everything relating to barbering. It could have been shampooing, it could have been shaving, it could have been the number of hours, it could have been how the schools are set up. So you can see how broad that category is. That's where Michael Kelly and that's where Eric Beverly and Colleen and Mary earned their keep by just keeping an eye on it. We start off with this one. This is the one that deals with threading. We built this language to look very much like what California did in order to make it clear that the definition of barbering does not include threading. We want to make it clear. Basically, we didn't want to lose another $800,000 lawsuit. Hello. Can we not repeat that again? That's good. Amen, church. Amen. So 1601.0025, it's a statement that says, hey, everything above there that defines barbering, it does not include threading. Doesn't include it. So it takes it out of the definition. If you can interpret language up there above, it just says, to make it very, very clear, it's not included in there anymore, y'all. 1602, section 2 of the next one is the definition of cosmetology.
Just so that I stay with you, excuse me, may I ask you something? So now, if I remember, the underlying stuff is the stuff that's being added in.
That's brand new.
Okay, that's right.
That's brand
Okay,
new.
just wanted to
And
be sure.
1601, chapter 1601 is the barbering statute.
Sure.
Okay, and then 1602 is the cosmetology statute. So you're seeing that in barbering was a straightforward shot. Just knock it out, get that out the way. In 1602, we had to make a few more changes in the definition of number 8, superfluous hair from a person's body using the depilatories and preparations. We matched that language again to what California was saying to make it very clear. And then you see in section 3, they have their language that says, oh, it looks just like the language we put in there saying threading's not included in there. So that's a statement that says very clearly to the world, you do not have to have a barber license, you do not have to have a cosmetology license to thread.
Section 3, it's just the same.
And then section 4 is the effective date, so September 1, 2017, that is the law of the land. You do not have to have a barber license, do not have the cosmetology license to do threading in Texas.
Okay.
If you do anything else in conjunction with it, that is barbering or that is cosmetology, then you have to have a license to engage in those activities. But you can't mask, you can't say, okay, well, we're gonna shave you under this threading canopy. No. Threading is not covered by our law, but all the other activities still stay the same. 1503, and I'll just be very quick on this. I just wanted to kind of give you guys again the structure. You've got that the relating clause relating to abolishing shampoo apprentice permits and shampoo specialty certificates. When you look at that language there, you can clearly see there's not much more you can sneak under that heading. So it's very tailored, very tight, very tailored to that specific issue. We wanted to make sure that this heading stayed tight. We worked great with Senator Hancock's office and Chairman Kemple's office in the House and the Senate respectively. When you go through the statute, you see the first change is on line 19, shampooing. That's pulling it out of the definition of barbering. Yes, a barber can still shampoo. It is just making it clear to the untrained eye that we are not saying shampooing is an individual scope of practice underneath barbering. But yes, a barber still can shampoo. You need to wash my beard. You need to wash my little scalpy scalp and all that stuff. That's still there. But you don't have a specific individual scope of practice that relates to shampooing.
And so you don't think that that will present a problem coming down the line if somebody says, well, okay.
Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all,
Very good.
because we have, we're gonna use some of that 1968 common sense when those issues come to us.
Okay.
And make sure that we apply some common sense and raise folks have it there in the inspection point of contact, and Kaiser's people have it in their enforcement division.
Okay, because I was wondering, because we still require a shampoo bowl.
Still have shampoo bowl,
Yeah, okay.
exactly,
All
exactly.
right.
Yeah, and it will not adversely impact that at all. And then on page 2, I is also doing shampoo and conditioning of a person's hair. Again, pulling it out as a specific scope of practice, but not prohibiting a barber from doing it. In fact, it says that anybody can shampoo. And for whatever reason, Madam Chair and board members, there was a whole lot of passion on a national level about shampooing. Every time you read a report about the need to dereg and do it at X, Y, and Z, they'd have shampooing as like the #1 issue, and it became this banner. Well, the banner's taken away now. And let's move on to some real stuff, okay? And that's what that effort allowed us to do. When you look at section 2, that is also dealing with barbering. It just simply strikes through what was the shampooing and the scope of practice. So because that no longer exists on page 2, it doesn't need to be here as a scope of practice for the technician license. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm only hesitating because I know that when shaving was our separating point, it was because it was listed as what we could do. And so I don't want it to, when you and I are no longer in these roles, for it to slide into being a fact that, well, you all can't shampoo because it's not in your statute, and I'm concerned about that.
You know, think about it from the converse.
Okay?
Everybody can shampoo, so it could never prevent you from shampooing.
Okay, so when you say everybody can shampoo, and I mean, it's too late now because it's already in the statute. I'm just trying to understand, and we learned from this legislative process over the years that people will use it in any kind of way, and so my concern
Absolutely.
is the fact, one of the things we learned when we were talking about the foot thing, a couple of legislative sessions before, is that once you remove it, it's very difficult to get something back in. So I don't want us haphazardly putting nails in the coffin. And so I just want to be sure, because when you say, well, it's just saying that you don't have to have a special person to do it, we understand that. My concern is if it's not in here, will this later, 2 years down the road, 4 years down the road, become a problem of you guys can't wash because shampooing is not in your definition?
We'll definitely keep an eye on that, and we'll make sure that Colleen keeps taking her common sense pills every
Yeah.
morning. I think she'll be here a little bit longer than I am.
Yeah. I hope so. I just want us to be aware. 'Cause
Absolutely,
we've
and
had-
you're absolutely right. People will try to arrive at some absurd conclusions
Right.
to make an absurd point.
Yeah.
And I agree.
Because I
Exactly.
also don't want someone coming saying, why do I have to buy the shampoo? Those shampoo bowls are expensive. Why do I have to have a shampoo bowl when shampooing is not part of what it is that we have to do? We've eased into this the same way that we stopped having to have a sink between every two barbers. And it's a slippery slope. And once we start saying, well, yeah, but this makes common sense. We thought it was okay to have one sink way down there until we discovered that people don't go way down that hall to wash their hands.
And then you have
in between.
sanitation issues that
And then you
crop
got
up because they're not
sanitation,
doing what
yeah.
they should do.
Yeah, so,
You're still
please-
gonna have, under your sanitation provisions, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
But when you look at the section 100s, you're still gonna have those sanitation provisions that fall under this advisory board that say you must clean X in between, you must do Y. That's not changing.
That doesn't change, but we remove the vehicle that gave them the opportunity to do that. And so on a Saturday and a Friday, when the shop is full, and the inspector's not there or doesn't write it up, they're not washing their instruments and they're not washing their hands because the sink is all the way down, 5 chairs down from where I am. And so we thought that it was a good thing because people were talking about cutting down the expense, and now that we had the hand sanitizer. But we learned from the physicians that you all brought in that hand sanitizer doesn't clean your hands.
I love
If
it.
you have something under your fingernail, it's still under your fingernail. So what I'm trying to learn by these past mistakes is to not leave ourselves vulnerable to have to come back to it. And I understand that, the legislative session is over and this is a moot point. But I want us to consider that so that 2 years from now, if we need to revisit that, we do, because this is how we have let things that sounded okay go by that created a problem for us later. Because now people are saying, well, we can't go back and put the sink between every two barbers because I've already built my shop, how do we do that grandfather clause? I'm
Absolutely.
concerned.
Absolutely, and one of the things I was just signing off with Eric Beverly, the legislature, after each session, and they've already asked us to kind of look into or provide suggestions, they always ask us, have you had any challenges implementing the bills? Have there been any unintended consequences of moving forward with it or not moving forward with it? And so that's an opportunity that if we find out that there's a rash of sanitation violations or other issues, we can say, hey, let's put some language in that says very clearly you can't make somebody have a shampoo license, but it may be helpful to put that language back in there. And I think we have the ability to do that if.
Okay, and when does that process, when do you get that question?
It
6
literally
months after?
starts now. They reached out to us Friday,
Okay.
saying, hey, TLR, do you have any recommendations for what they call an interim charge? And so we're giving them some feedback, and historically, their interim charge language has always said, give us an update on the implementation of bills that came out of this session. So that's an opportunity for us to use that. We avail ourselves of that.
Okay, thank you. And we had talked before, when it wasn't a legislative layer, but looking at that about the sinks as well. Even if, and I think we should continue that, because I see too much. And as you have said before, we don't have a whole lot of inspectors. And if the inspector is sitting there, somebody knows to go watch what they're supposed to watch, but we know that it's not happening. And we've had barbers tell us it's not happening. So I'd like to look at both of those. Thank you.
Section 3 is going to the cosmetology changes, and you're going to see that they're parallel, striking through the word shampooing on line 21. Turn to page 4. On line 3, it's striking through shampooing and conditioning of hair. Very similar to exactly like what we did on the barbering side of the statutory change. We turn to page 5 on section 4, section 5, section 6, and section 7. Those are making the changes that are necessitated by striking through what was item 9. Sorry, trying to go from memory. But when we took out item 2, it changed the numbering going up. And so now on the cosmetology side, it's just simply adjusting the scope of practice for the specialty instructors. It's only for 5, 7, 8, and 10 versus 6, 7, 8, and 9. It just adjusted the numbers, and you'll see that change going throughout. It's very similar to what we did on the barber side, where we struck through I. This is their version of making the changes on their scope. Same things for section 9 on page 6, section 10, section 11. It's catching up their scope to the changes that were made. Section 12, this is for cosmetology only. We had the strike-through language that was specifically identified shampoo specialty certificates. So that's what that cleanup language is doing there. No longer have that certificate. When you look at page 7 on line 8, 9, and 10, that is striking through the scope of practice, saying that a person to shampoo or condition hair, unless they had that apprentice permit or a student permit, it's striking through that to make it very clear that you don't have to hold those things in order to do it anymore. That's on the cosmetology side. 1603, that's the chapter that has joint elements. So it has barber-related stuff and cosmetology-related stuff. If there's a rule, if there's a scope of practice that covers both categories, we put it in 1603, and that happened probably back in 2007 when that section was created. When you
I'm
look
not
at-
seeing 1603, I see 1602. Where are you seeing?
Look on
1603?
page 7,
Oh, okay.
on line 11, under section 14.
Okay, got it, thank
So
you.
remember, we went from the barber-specific statute in 01, cosmetology-specific in 02, and then the joint stuff in
Okay.
03.
Okay.
And again, it's just cleaning up the definition change that was relating to shampooing, when you look at the body of those changes there. Section 15, I'd like to just point your attention to that. Those are the repealers. So this is where you want to go through and take a look and say, okay, what did they take out? One of them is relating to the student permit that gave them authority to do shampooing. One's related to the specialty certificate that gave them authority to do shampooing. But go in there and take a look at those, because that language won't be in your statute come September 1 or as soon as we get it out there. So take a look at the repealers, just kind of get a sense of what it is. All of those do and should relate to shampooing, but I still encourage you to take a look at it, okay? And then if you look at sections 16 and 17, these are the two sections that relate to what we call the transition clauses. So in section 16, it says the shampoo apprentice, whether it was issued by the barber statute or the cosmetology statute, and the shampoo specialty certificate issued under the cosmetology statute expires on the effective date of this law. So if you had one for 16 years, and if you got one 16 days ago, September 1, 2017, poof, it expires. If you look at section 17, that's just some language that you'll normally see in transition language that says, by the way, the law that was in effect on September 1, 2017 still governs any violations that took place before that change. So technically, you could have a case, we would dismiss it, but you could have a case of somebody operating on August 31st without a shampoo specialty license in a shop. And our inspectors find it, and they write it up. That's technically a violation, and we could take action against it. We will not take action against it, since the next day, no one would need to have it. But that's what that language does. It keeps in place the statutory provisions that existed before the day, before the effective date, and says those after have new guidelines. This one before has.
When did we develop the shampooing? Didn't we do that recently? Like a couple of last or the
It's got at least 2 sessions ago, at least 2, where we tied it to the student permit, saying that if you're going to work in a shop, you know, the shampoo apprentice or the ability to shampoo was tied to the student permit.
I bring that up only because in talking to the students earlier, and you can tell them they're gone now, but you can tell them, we talked about that there oftentimes we try things because it sounds like a good idea.
Yes.
And then a couple of years later, we're having the struggle to take it out of the legislative law. And that happens here, and that's why they need to be here. So please share this example with them. That there was a whole big hoopla to get it in, and now we're saying, oh, we don't need that, so.
We did it with the risk-based inspections.
Yeah.
It sounded like a good idea.
It did sound like a good idea at the time. And so I'm not complaining about us being flexible. I just want us to be sure that when we do take something out, that we add something in, that we recognize the ramifications. And that's one of the reasons why we have public comment, and why I encourage the students and barbers to fill out the forms. Because if you're the one doing it every day, you may see things that we may not see.
Absolutely.
Just because my shop may not do what your shop does, and we don't realize that we're affecting somebody's income. Like when we were about to take out the podiatry feet thing, a young man came up and said, my whole business is based on this model, and if you all tell me I can't do it, that's a major problem for me and the new generation that's coming up. And we, you know, because anyway. Yes.
Address?
Absolutely.
I want to be clear on section 13.
Which statute?
1602,
Okay.
point 403.
What page are you on, sir?
I'm on page 6.
All right, thank you.
It starts at the bottom on page 6, continues on page 7. It's stating about the occupational code is amended to read as follows.
Okay.
A person holding a beauty shop license or specialty shop license may not employ a person as an operator or specialist, or lease to a person who acts as an operator or specialist unless the person holds a license or certificate under this chapter or under chapter 1601.
Correct.
Stating clarity that no one can work in a licensed salon or shop without a license, correct?
Not correct. But in the zip code and neighborhood of correct.
All right.
What it did is, it's just simply.
It's gray.
That's right, what you said, that's a good start, that's a good start.
It's gray.
So the statute before said everybody who works in there, who does something, has to have a license. So you can't employ somebody to do these things unless they're licensed. By striking through the shampoo part, it says you can't employ an operator or a licensed specialist, but by striking through shampoo, it says you can have somebody shampoo in there who's not licensed. That's what it does.
Okay.
And that was the whole goal of that
Gotcha.
effort. Yes, sir. Thank you very
You know
much.
I had another one. I got the shampoo part.
That's all right.
I'm good.
That's all right.
I
So,
might be getting torn between Cosmo and Barber, I don't know.
yeah.
I might be stuck between the two because I have both, but go ahead.
Well, and just keep in mind, I just wanted to nudge the board into looking at the statutory language that closely. You got to drill down and say, what does it mean to the practitioner, the person who's just starting out in business? How are they going to read this? And then you have to think about the rules that we're putting in place or taking out, trying to implement this. So you just have to be thoughtful about it. But you can't begin to understand what you have to do statutorily if you don't understand the legislative changes.
Right.
And it just takes time just to read through them.
Ron, what are your concerns? What are you thinking? Well, go ahead and tell us.
Well, we just did away with the braiding deregulation, and so I'm just trying to understand who's all legal to work in a salon. You know, what license do we have to hold to work in a salon? I know we took out shampoo, I got that.
Mr. Jemison, I'll just tell you that your mother was never shy about speaking to
I
you.
know she was.
We need
Well,
to make
the
sure you
mic's,
get to
the
that
mic's
mic.
over here. She asked me a question, I'm speaking directly to her, I'm sorry.
That's all right. That's all right.
You know, she know I can get loud.
I know. What's going on here?
No, I'm good.
I was asking because this is the time for us to discuss those concerns, and nothing is off the table. Because if we are doing something that creates a problem, or this is kind of the now the time.
Right.
And particularly since you said that they will come back and ask, because we have done things where it was a battle to get it changed back. And so if we're making a mistake, or if there's something we haven't thought of, it would be great to hear, because I remember when we had this discussion about doing this with shampoo people, there was some concern that people were having, just somebody giving somebody a job and letting them shampoo house, and I forget who it was carrying the banner, but it was, we need to license these people, and it's important and all that. And now we're finding out that we want to take it out. And now
We have taken it out.
Yeah, we have taken it out, that it is. And so my concern, I grew up going to the beauty shop, and I don't think the person was ever licensed to shampoo my hair, and I was fine with that. So I'm asking because I genuinely want to understand. My issue with it is that I don't want it to ever become a thing between cosmetology and barbering about barbers being able to shampoo. Because I see some people walk into the shop and I'm thinking, I wouldn't touch it till I had washed it.
Right,
you
right,
know?
right.
But, I want to be sure that we're not shooting our industry in the foot. And if there are concerns, particularly if you have both, you have a really good perspective because you understand both sides. So if there's something that you could educate us on, I just wanted to hear it. That's
Yeah,
all.
I just wanted to make sure that that I understood the language as it was read. That if you work in a licensed facility, you had to hold a license. But then we crossed out shampooing, so I guess that eliminates that. But does it open the door for others?
Others like what? What do you?
Other scope of practice activities.
Yes.
And
Exactly.
So his concern is the reverse of what I was concerned about, in that you're saying you want to be sure that people aren't assuming then that means you can do a lot of stuff without a license. You want to be sure that the language is clear, that the only thing you can do without a license is shampooing.
Correct.
Okay, very good. And then
and we'll have
my-
FAQs to that effort and making it extremely clear on that.
So the feedback should be, to me, in my opinion, that it has raised two questions about wanting clarity, because you're wanting to be sure that all the other stuff does require a license and that we're only saying this is unlicensed. And my concern is I'm wanting to be sure that it's not read that because it's all struck out and
That you
not
can't do
saying
it.
that you can't do it anymore. So when you answer that call, please tell them that with the language, that there were two concerns about this for the industry,
Well,
that
Madam
we-
Chair, keep in mind, you're getting ready to appoint the work groups.
Yeah.
And that's where the wrestling takes place for the group. And then they'll come back to your September 11th meeting with the results of the work group discussion.
So would this fall under administration?
It's gonna be
I think it
under
was the
two
first one.
places.
Okay.
And I think your
It was the first
administrative,
one.
your administrative
what I
work
was
group,
thinking.
as well as the health and safety concern that
Health
you
and
raised.
safety.
So, Madam Chair, that's all I had under G. I just wanted to
Okay.
kind of stimulate stimulate you guys in regard to looking at statutory language,
Oh,
but also
yeah.
to delve
It's
into-
evident that you did, right? That's right. And what's good about this board, we are a new board now, is that it shows me that everybody's paying attention to detail, and that's a good
Absolutely.
thing. That's a very good thing. Okay, so if you're through with your discussion,
Yes,
now
ma'am.
we're talking about the appointments.
Please.
We're ready to go on. Okay. We were, took a few minutes during the break to kind of look at everybody's list and what you wanted. And so, I think that it's really good that we have some people who are really willing to work. We're gonna put you to work too. The administrative.
I'll work on that.
So we're gonna do the administrative rules group will be Ron Jemison and myself.
Okay.
Education and curriculum work group will be Ron Jemison and Jenny Hatch. The enforcement group is going to be James Brown and Ron Jemison.
And we're gonna call him a different last name?
Oh,
What we gonna call
Bowen,
him?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Because
Bowen.
everybody's about to line up and start getting autographs. I'm like, I'm getting one.
I want one now, okay. And then, James Bowen and Michelle Wasser will do health and safety workshop. And the licensing work group will be Michelle Wasser and, Jenny Hatch. Okay,
Outstanding.
very good,
Madam Chair, we will have liaisons for each of those groups
okay.
from our respective divisions. So Ray, like education examination, enforcement will either be Charlotte or Chris, and they will reach out to the work group members. Here's the caution, because you guys are such a small group. So Michelle, when you're doing your health and safety, I believe you're on health and safety. When you're on the health and safety group, you can't say in that group, oh, you know, on the licensing one, we talked about doing X, because you just walked that quorum.
Right.
So just be mindful that you have two folks on each committee, because we don't want to trigger the quorum that Colleen talked about. So when you are working on health and safety, you're just working on health and safety. Don't bring in the conversations from your other work groups. And that's just something that we would tell all the board members.
And yeah, especially, yeah, Ron, since you're on 3 of them, so, this is good. All right, recommendations for agenda items. Mr. Francis, we mentioned the things that, Mr. Lane had brought up, so we're going to, if we're going to discuss that, are we gonna put that on the next agenda?
We can definitely put it on the next agenda. We're definitely going to get some answers with our folks that are from PSI to give an update on that. So we'll have that during the staff reports. And it's something that can be discussed.
See that everybody's wanting it. So let me read this to you again. The list is Ron Jameson and Linda Connor on administrative. Education and curriculum work group is Ron Jameson and Jenny Hatch. Enforcement work group is James Bowen and Ron Jameson. And the safety is, James Bowen and Michelle Wasser. And licensing group is Jenny Hatch and Michelle Wasser.
Okay? Thank you.
Okay? All right.
So Madam Chair, we will have the issues and a report on the concerns that were raised by Mr. Lane. We'll also have work group reports
Sure.
coming from the different groups.
So by September, in our meeting in September, you said we're having one in September.
September
correct?
11th would be that
Yeah,
Monday.
and we'll confirm the date, but by September 11th, the work groups should be ready.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you
Our
all can
staff
do
will
it
be
by
reaching out to
phone or
you.
however you want to do it. But again, as he mentioned, since everybody's working on more than one, don't bring the dialogue from the other committee to say, well, in there we did whatever.
Yes.
It's just to keep us honest to that. Okay, that was the main thing. And then if you have any update on the 2 issues we told you about the shampooing, the 2 concerns about the legislative thing, will you keep
Well,
us
I'll
posted?
fully expect that work group or the work groups to bring that information back.
Okay,
to
so
the
then,
board.
so when we're talking about the shampooing thing, then we'll go through so you'll hold off on responding to the people who contacted you to say, hey, how's it going? Until we get back in September?
They'll have a general interim charge that says, tell us what you've implemented. That won't go into effect probably until December, so we have some time on that.
Okay.
But we did give them our feedback today, because we had a deadline today. But it's general, though. It's
Okay.
general on this stuff, so we'll be able to put it in there. I feel
Okay.
confident about it.
So the associated work groups that would deal with that would be administrative and.
And the health and safety,
and the
I
health
think,
and safety.
are the two.
So on the
We'll
health
make
and
sure that they
safety.
get those questions.
Oh, good, okay. So, on the health, I'll be on the administrative side, I know that Ron and I can talk about it, and since I can't talk to the other two of you, James and Michelle, you all, have heard what we've been talking about the issues about, the shampoo being struck and the ramifications that could have. Please, since you'll be our representatives, carry that forth and then let us know what you all think. Is there anything else that anybody would like to consider to be added to the agenda?
Madam Chair, I'll just say at that meeting, there will be proposed rules
Sure.
to implement these provisions coming out of those work groups as well.
Right, that, which will be very good. And that would, you won't get our feedback until September when we have the meeting, correct?
Correct. Well, the work groups will help us develop that language. And
Right.
then it'll come to the advisory board, and then we'll do the 30-day comment period after the advisory board meeting.
Okay, then that's a step we haven't discussed, then how do you want us to get, so you want us to give you our written stuff beforehand, so that when we get to the meeting in September, we're ready to discuss it and you've had a chance to massage it?
Our staff will call you guys, and you
Okay.
may have written stuff, you may not
Yeah,
have written
verbally.
stuff, but we'll get you there.
Okay, and so around, I'm a detail person, sorry.
I'd say
Okay.
late July
July.
to mid-August is when the staff will probably be reaching out to you. I'm
Okay.
gonna let them take off for, 4th of July. You know.
Exactly.
One day, one day.
They get that one day.
One
They
day.
better live it up too.
So,
Falls on a Tuesday.
we're saying the middle of July or the end of July, or the end of July and the middle of August.
And if that changes, Tamala will reach out to you guys. to
Okay,
let you know.
and so, Ms. Tamala, one of the things I would recommend is, as we are beginning to get close to the deadline when you need us to have responded to you, can you give us at least a week, or maybe even 2, to say, I'm gonna be asking for those reports, or people are gonna be calling you on these dates, just in case it, has slipped? Thanks, we appreciate that. Anything, yes?
Yes. Is it too late to ask for a possible another agenda item?
No,
Okay.
that's what we're
That's what we're
discussing
talking
now,
about.
what
Okay.
did you want?
Just, I thought maybe it might be a good idea to talk about the inspection scheduling a little bit more.
Okay. Can you give us a little bit more of the issue?
Well, Tanya brought up scheduling inspections for the mini shops that are all
Alright.
in one place. And I just thought, just thinking about perhaps streamlining and helping out the inspectors a little bit and lowering the cost, that just discussing the possibility, the pros and cons of perhaps scheduling inspections for all shops.
Oh, okay, interesting, okay. So if we're going to talk, in addition to the issue of the mini shops being notified before the inspectors come, the pros and cons of possibly doing that with all the shops?
Absolutely.
Okay,
And if you want to assign that to a work group, so we've got some momentum on that,
that would go, it sounds to me like it would go with the health, and the enforcement groups. Don't you, both of those?
I would just say health, since enforcement's separate from Tanya's group, and then we can have Tanya's group involved in the health and safety work group.
Okay.
And just, we'll add that to the mix of discussion items.
Okay.
Perfect, thank
I
you.
think it'd be helpful.
And so, yeah, what I would, trying to figure out how to say this and stay within our boundaries. Look at it from all sides is what I will say.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
from the complaints that we've gotten repeatedly. Okay, anybody else has anything else they want on the agenda? I'd like to put on there a victory party for my high school, but that's okay. Really very, very grateful for the work that TDLR has done for getting it into the high schools. All right, since we don't have anything else, and it is 12:20, unless anybody objects? Any objections? Nope, we are adjourned.